After being put to his place, Villager A, also known as Clover, no longer dared to talk arrogantly to 13. The only thing he could do was glare in the younger boy's direction as they prepared to leave the cave. The 7-year-old told Harry that he could keep half of the food and water in his cart. He also gave them 3 short swords and 3 daggers that they could use to arm themselves and hopefully survive the Houdini Desert. With their numbers, 13 believed that they would be able to survive the Houdini Desert if they worked together. He even gave them one of the condor's claws and a flint as a freebie so that they could make fires. After that, he bid Harry goodbye and left the cave. However, to his surprise, someone else decided to join them. It was none other than Rianna, who was mounted on her black Morgan. Just like most girls her age, she hadn't fully matured yet. But with her pretty face, 13 was certain that Rianna would be a looker after a few more years. Her long brown hair nestled gently behind her back, and her hazel eyes scanned the surroundings for possible threats, making 13 have a better impression of her. "Why are you following us?" 13 asked. He could tell from a glance that Rianna had received some proper training. Unlike a day ago where she was acting timid, she was now showing a competent and confident side of her that made 13 realize that she was just hiding her true character from others. As to why she was showing this side of her, the younger boy could only make a guess, and that was she was trying to show him that she would be a good addition to his team and would not drag them down. "Being with you will give me a higher chance of surviving this place," Rianna replied. "Also, I don't want to remain indebted to others. I will make sure to repay you before I finish my first quest here in Solterra." "Confident are we?" 13 commented. "I'm not that confident," Rianna stated. "But with you, I think I have a higher chance of returning to Pangea. I think you are the most confident 7-year-old I've seen in my life. Most of the children I see from the influential families are just spoiled and arrogant pricks who think that everyone who doesn't have a good background are just to be used as tools or stepping stones to help them attain a higher position in their family." 13 didn't say anything and observed their surroundings. They weren't far from the orc stronghold, so the chances of them meeting a hunting party was high. Because of this, he kept his eyes and ears open for anything that might threaten their lives. Since they only had a few hours before sunset, they traveled as much as they could while looking for a place to rest for the night. Building a fire was not a good idea because they would get spotted by the orcs, so their only option was to find a cave or a place where they could properly take a rest. Fortunately, the area had a lot of caves, so they chose one that wasn't inhabited by a monster or had traces of being used by the orcs. The teenage girl was more competent than 13 expected, which was a good thing in his book. Christopher had 2 brute monsters that gave them the necessary manpower to fend off most threats in the Houdini Desert. Rianna told him that she was only average in ranged combat because she specialized in using swords. Because of this, 13 had given her one of his short bows and a quiver to act as support during battles. He had also given her one of the short swords in his possession, which boosted her effectiveness in battle. Since she was riding on the Black Morgan, which she named Lancelot, she was capable of mounted combat, allowing them to use strategies that weren't available to them before. As the 3 of them settled in for the night, Brutus and Bruno took turns in doing the night watch. Both brute monsters had night vision, and Brutus also had a very strong sense of smell. With these qualities, they were the perfect lookouts while the 3 teenagers rested. When morning came, they had breakfast and prepared to continue their journey. Currently, they were taking the northeastern route. 13 had talked with Christopher in private to tell him the plan he had in mind. Now that they had Rianna with them, he believed that they had a higher chance of getting an orc avatar for the chubby boy, which would be a good addition to the number of servants under his command. However, 13 wasn't just aiming for an ordinary orc. This time, he was aiming for a high orc. The hunting parties that left the orc stronghold usually numbered around 4 to 12 individuals. Bigger hunting parties usually targeted monster herds, similar to the hunting party that 13 and Christopher first encountered when they arrived in the orc territory. He didn't plan on targeting those big hunting groups. His aim was to look for a party with a high orc, which was a rank 3 monster. Although it was a rank 3 monster, in terms of strength and raw power, they were weaker than rank 2 ogres and trolls. However, having a rank 3 high orc was important if they wanted to enter the barbarian kingdom. High orcs were smarter and more adaptable to the situation than the regular orcs. If they were going to infiltrate the barbarians' domain, he would need a pawn that would ensure that they wouldn't become slaves the moment they entered the barbarians' domain. Since avatars were said to retain their memories before they died, having a high orc would allow 13 to ask questions that Brutus and Bruno couldn't answer. The group of 5 saw several hunting parties after several hours of traveling. However, they didn't make any move because either they didn't have a high orc among their ranks, or they were simply too many to take on. Finally, just before noon, they came across a hunting party that consisted of 6 orcs, with one of them being a high orc. To their surprise, these orcs were currently fighting against a spiny bronze anteater, the monster from whom Brutus got his spiked mace after they had successfully killed it. It was a rank 2 monster, so it wasn't an easy opponent for the orcs. However, after seeing the hunting party encircle it, 13 could tell that this wasn't their first time hunting this monster. "What should we do?" Rianna asked 13. "Should we let them fight the monster and wait for it to finish, or we attack them while they are fighting the monster?" "Of course we attack them while they are facing off against the monster," 13 replied. "Just remember this, Rianna. You can kill any of them with the exception of the high orc. Christopher and I will deal with it." "Understood," Rianna nodded. "Now, tell me the strategy we are going to use in this fight." Rianna didn't mind letting 13 take the lead because she had recognized his ability. Truth be told, when the 7-year-old told them that he would do his best to rescue them from the barbarians, she just thought that he was just bluffing. Not only was he younger than them, he was also alone. She didn't believe for a second that the boy would actually do as he promised. But she was wrong. Just like the other teenagers that were imprisoned at that time, they didn't think that Zion would carry through with his promise. However, when the boy managed to kill the 3 barbarians and set them free, she decided that there was more to him than met the eye. Because of this, she decided to stay with him, so that she would better understand if what 13 did was just a fluke, or if he was really someone who would be able to defy all odds, and allow her to complete her mission, which was something that she intended to finish no matter what. Similar to the other teenagers, her family was waiting for her back home. Also, her father was someone she didn't want to disappoint no matter what. One of her goals was to become a soldier for the central government, so she didn't mind following orders. But, if she was going to follow someone, she wanted to follow the orders of a competent person who wouldn't use her as a disposable tool to accomplish the goal that they wished to achieve. The orcs had the spiny bronze anteater surrounded, but their opponent was a tough nut to crack. Even with so many enemies ganging up on it, it stood its ground and gave the orcs a hard time. 13's group had also fought this monster in the past, so he understood how hard it was to kill it. However, this wasn't the first time that the orcs were fighting such a monster. They already knew the strategy that they had to use against it. The high orc commanded its subordinates to use hit-and-run tactics to pressure the anteater while it waited for the perfect opportunity to move in and flip it over. Once that is done, 2 more orcs would move in to stab its soft underside, dealing serious injuries to the anteater. After that, it was only a matter of time before it bled to death or completely unable to right itself, allowing it to land more hits on its body, ending its life. Seeing that the opportunity had come, the high orc charged forward and grabbed the side of spiny bronze anteater's body. Using all of the strength it could muster, the high orc roared and flipped the monster's body. As soon as he succeeded, the 2 orcs who were waiting for this opportunity moved in to stab the soft underbelly of the anteater, making it bellow in pain and anger. Suddenly, they heard the sounds of hooves in the background. However, before the other orcs could even look in the direction where the sounds were coming from, one of them got hit by an arrow in the arm. A moment later, another arrow flew and hit another orc. But this time, the arrow landed in its throat, making it grunt. The high orc's gaze then landed on a black horse that was running in their direction with 2 humans riding on its back. Rianna had one of her arms wrapped around 13's body, holding him in place, while the younger boy fired one arrow after the other, aiming at the orcs in the distance. 3 of the orcs were hit, while the other 3, including the high orc, used their shields to block the other incoming arrows. While this was happening, the spiny bronze anteater righted itself up and tackled the orc closest to it. Its sharp claws dug deep into the orc's body, causing the latter to cry out in pain. Seeing this scene, the high orc knew that their operation was compromised. The anteater only ate ants, but it was still a rank 2 monster that mustn't be underestimated. With the anteater behind him and the 2 humans in front, the high orc knew that it wasn't in a position to defend itself properly. The only saving grace was that the anteater was already seriously injured and might bleed to death very soon. Perhaps knowing that it didn't have long to live, the anteater decided to take the orcs down with it, so after mauling the first orc to death, it shifted its attention to the high orc and the other orc beside it. With a bellow filled with anger, the anteater charged at the 2 orcs, prompting the high orc to distance itself from the monster. The other orc was about to do the same, but before he could do that, an arrow hit his leg, hampering its movements. The arrows that 13 shot were coated with the venom of the purple desert scorpion, paralyzing everyone it hit. Although the orcs wouldn't be paralyzed right away, it still made their movements sluggish, buying the spiny bronze anteater plenty of time to catch up. 13 then focused his attention on the high orc and shot one arrow after the other. However, the latter used its shield effectively to block the arrows headed in its direction. As the high orc was doing this, it was running in a particular direction so that it wouldn't be sandwiched between the humans and the anteater, who was now fighting the orc it had set its eyes on. "Chase the high orc," 13 commanded. "Okay," Rianna replied. The younger boy's target was the high orc, so he wouldn't let it escape no matter what. 13 fired one arrow after another, putting pressure on the high orc, who had no choice but to block his attacks while running away. First off, it knew that it couldn't run toward the Black Morgan because it was way faster than it. Second, it believed that the moment the human ran out of arrows, the boy would no longer be able to threaten it. "This high orc is smart," 13 thought as he fired another arrow. "Fortunately, I prepared in advance." Just as the high orc was about to hide behind a nearby boulder as a shield, it found itself facing a bone club headed straight to its chest, which sent it flying. 13, who was waiting for this moment, fired 2 arrows in rapid succession, hitting the high orc's body. Brutus then ran past Bruno, shouting his war cry with his spiked mace raised high. It then mercilessly smashed it down, aiming at the high orc's chest with the intention of killing it. The high orc had no intention of dying, so it rolled to its side, evading the attack. Although its movements slowed down considerably due to the scorpion's venom, it took a fighting stance, raising its sword and shield to fight Brutus to death. Unfortunately for it, this wasn't a one-on-one battle. Bruno, who was feeling competitive with Brutus, also charged forward with its bone club raised high. Christopher, who was hiding somewhere safe, clenched his fist in excitement. The young master did it again. Christopher watched as his 2 subordinates worked together to confront the high orc. "This high orc is as good as ours." Brutus and Bruno took turns attacking the pitiful high orc, who was unable to come up with a strategy to defeat the 2 brute monsters. Its body was also starting to succumb to the scorpion's poison, rendering it unable to fight properly. Because of this, it was unable to do anything and simply stood, blocking and parrying the attacks of the 2 monsters who left it with nowhere to run. This battle lasted for a few minutes before Bruno, who was using his overwhelming strength to his advantage, unleashed a powerful blow, which shattered the high orc's shield and broke the arm that was holding it. Brutus didn't miss this opportunity and smashed his spiked mace on the high orc's chest, making the latter collapse on the ground. It was Bruno who landed the killing blow by smashing the high orc's head with its bone club, finally ending its life. After confirming that the high orc was dead, 13 urged Rianna to return to where the other orcs were so that she could land the killing blow on the survivors. Out of the 5 orcs, only 3 survived. The anteater, on the other hand, was lying on its side, no longer able to move, and was just waiting for its death. Although it was dying, 13 didn't take any chances and ordered Rianna to hit its underbelly with an arrow. Rianna obeyed and hit her target. The Black Morgan stood 5 meters away from it. They then went to the 3 surviving orcs and repeated the same process. Only this time, Rianna used arrows coated with the yellow striped dusk brute's poison, ensuring that they would succumb to death slowly. Rianna managed to get an item from the 4 monsters that she had killed, which wasn't a bad thing. The item she got was a spiny dagger that had the ability to return to its owner with a command or just a thought. Of course, this item came from the spiny bronze anteater, which they had killed. 13 then rummaged through the belongings of the orcs and looked for things that they could use. He collected their swords and a few silver coins, which they used to trade with the barbarians. Although none of them could wield the swords of the orcs, Brutus could, so he kept them in storage. 13 also collected the arrows he had used in battle because he had a very limited supply of them. After making sure that they had taken everything useful, they left the scene and joined up with Christopher, who was smiling ear to ear because he now had a high orc under his command. "So, what is your name?" 13 asked the high orc in front of him. "My name is Jubii," the high orc replied. Unlike Brutus and Bruno who didn't have their own names, the high orc had its own name. Since that was the case, Christopher decided to keep the name out of respect for his new subordinate. "So, Jubii, can you tell me more about the balance of power here in the Houdini Desert?" 13 asked. "Also, tell me all the interesting news and rumors that you know." The high orc nodded before answering 13's questions. Christopher ordered the high orc to always obey 13's orders as if he were the one giving him the order. Having received such a question, he didn't hesitate to obey and answered the younger boy. "The strongest race in the Houdini Desert are the barbarians," Jubii replied. "The second strongest are the orcs. Following that are the ogres. The trolls are at the bottom of the hierarchy. However, this ranking is only based on the development of both races. When it comes to pure power, the ogres still reign supreme. As for tenacity, it is the trolls. The orcs and the barbarians do not rely solely on strength but on strategy as well. Ogres and trolls are simply too dumb to understand such concepts. Although they can also form hunting parties together, their ability to strategize is dirt poor. So if there is a war of the races, despite their strength and tenacity, we believe that the orcs and the barbarians will win hands down. In short, the ogres and trolls are too dumb to use their God-given abilities." This explanation earned him the disgruntlement of Christopher's 2 other brutes, who were also there to welcome their new ally. "You dumb!" Brutus growled. "Dumb!" Bruno pounded the ground with its bone club, showing how pissed he was. Jubii was unfazed by his 2 companions' reactions. The reason? It was because the truth hurt. Just as Jubii was about to proceed to answer 13's next question, the 2 brutes started to make noises in the background due to their discontentment. "Both of you shut up," 13 said coldly, making the 2 brute monsters behave like little kids who had just been scolded by their parents. "There is news that the barbarians are doing something big," Jubii stated. "It seems that they plan to wage war on the inhabitants of the next island." 13 then accessed the database in his soul core to get the information he needed. "Are you talking about the capital city of the Valbera Kingdom, Lunation?" 13 asked. "No." Jubii shook his head. "The Valbera Kingdom fell long ago. The second island is now under the control of the Tigerkins. They changed the name of the kingdom to the Sumatran Kingdom. The name of their capital city is Dawn." 13 sighed in his heart. 300 years was indeed a long time. And in Solterra, it was enough time to see the rise and fall of the kingdoms he once knew. Tigerkins, since they managed to invade the Valbera Kingdom, it means they are strong, right? 13 asked. "They are," Jubii replied. "But they were weakened by the war 20 years ago. However, the barbarians think that they are only biding their time before they launch an invasion on our land." "I see." 13 nodded in understanding. "You talk well, Jubii. It's like I'm really talking to a human instead of an orc." "This is the gift that I have received from Master Christopher," Jubii replied. "My previous self was just a brute who knew how to fight." 13 glanced at Christopher, and the latter walked toward 13 to whisper something in his ears. "Jubii has the unique ability called Scholar," Christopher whispered. "It makes him incredibly smart and proficient in speaking all the languages in the Houdini Desert, including the language of free humans." 13 found this to be quite interesting. Just like Christopher had stated, the unique ability, Scholar, allowed anyone who possessed it to be incredibly smart and proficient in learning different kinds of languages. If Bruno suddenly gained this unique ability, the ogre would also be able to speak the human language as if he was born as a human instead of an ogre. Jubii, have you heard about the Beacon of Hope? 13 asked. Rianna, who had been quietly listening to the side, perked up after hearing this question. Since this was her quest that would allow her to return to Pangea, she paid extra attention to it. The Beacon of Hope is just a myth, Jubii replied. It is said that there will come a time when the Houdini Desert will face a calamity that will dye the ground red with blood. The only way to survive this terrible fate is by lighting the Beacon of Hope. Our ancestors have tried to look for it, but they never found anything. Even the barbarians have searched far and wide for it within their territories, but they weren't able to find it. Perhaps it's in the territories of the ogres or trolls, but none of us dare to enter too deeply into their domains. Although our races would not hesitate to kill each other if we met in the desert, a full-blown war between the four races has never happened in the past. Also, due to the alliance between the orcs and the barbarians, our races have been able to coexist side by side for hundreds of years. Even though we have allied with the humans, we still don't dare to invade the territories of the trolls and the ogres. They might be a dumb race, but their leaders are intelligent enough to know what is happening. An alliance between the trolls and ogres is a very scary thing, so we didn't dare launch an invasion against them. Brutus and Bruno, who were listening earlier, both smiled. They may not be as smart as Jubii, but both of them understood that their territories weren't attacked because they were strong. Jubii, have you gone to the barbarian cities before? 13 asked. This was a very important question, and the answer to it would decide what they were going to do next. Yes, Jubii replied. I frequently visit the barbarian city of Groner. It is the barbarian city nearest our stronghold and we actively trade with them. That is also where the most recent batch of slaves was supposed to be taken. 13 pondered for a while before making his decision. Although it would be a little risky, he wanted to go to the barbarian city to gather more information. Can you take us inside the city safely? 13 asked. I can, Jubii answered. But you might not like the method I will have to use to do that. Actually, 13 already knew what Jubii planned to do, but he was fine with it. As long as they could safely enter the barbarian city without worrying that the barbarians would target them, he was willing to be inconvenienced, even if it meant that his hands and feet would be tied up for a short period of time. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, 13 thought. Well, as long as I am able to confirm my suspicions, a little discomfort will be worth it. After hearing Jubii's proposal, 13, Christopher, and Rianna unanimously agreed to it. For the time being, all of them decided to spend the night in the cave that they found. The next day, they'd be heading to the city of Groner to see the sights and hear the sounds of the barbarian city, which would play an important role in 13's scheme. After traveling for nearly half a day, the group of people finally arrived at the entrance of Groner City. Although it was supposed to be a city, it was only a little over a kilometer long, and its width was roughly the same. Groner City was one of the places where trade between the orcs and the barbarians were in full swing. Even though it was small, it was one of the most important cities of the barbarian kingdom. Before coming to this place, 13 came up with a story that Jubii would use as an excuse if the latter was recognized by his fellow orcs. The story went something along these lines. While his hunting party was out looking for prey, they stumbled upon 3 children who were wandering within their territory. Since they had been ordered by their chieftain to catch any human children who weren't of barbarian descent they saw, they took them in. However, they didn't know that these children were being hunted down by ogres and their troll slaves. While they were on their way back to their base, they came across a spiny bronze anteater and thought that they could kill it as their prize before returning home. But in the middle of the battle, the ogres and trolls ambushed them, killing all of Jubii's teammates. The orc would then explain that he managed to run away, but since the path back to the stronghold was blocked by the ogres, he had no choice but to head to the barbarian city of Groner in the hope that he could join other orc hunting parties to return to their stronghold. As for the kids, he was planning to sell them as slaves to recover his losses. This was the story that 13 had prepared, and he made sure that Jubii memorized it very well. The high orc walked confidently toward the gate, gripping a rope attached to the bodies of the 3 children behind him. This ensured that they wouldn't be able to escape regardless of what they did. The barbarians only gave Jubii a brief nod and didn't even bother to question why he was entering their city. The sight of the 3 children was enough for them to assume that he was there to sell slaves. Because of this, they no longer thought of questioning him and simply allowed him to enter unchallenged. After entering the city, Jubii took the children to an inn that was a popular gathering place for orcs and barbarians. He only rented 1 big room since renting more than that would be very suspicious. "Make sure to bring a few buckets of water into my room," Jubii told the innkeeper. "These kids stink, so I plan to let them wash before I sell them. That way, I can fetch a higher price for them." "Understood," the innkeeper replied. "I will send someone to bring the buckets of water to your room." Groner City was situated beside a river, so they didn't have any shortage of water. It was also situated right outside the desert, so it became a hub of trade and activity for the orcs and the barbarians. As if to confirm that his guess was correct, a notification appeared, congratulating 13, for he had managed to pass one of the trials. Unique quest. Quest category, Chain Quest. Quest name, The 13 Trials. First trial, completed. Escape the Houdini Desert. Second trial, find a 5-leaf clover. Rewards for chain quest completion. You can go back home if you succeed, you unfilial brat. 13 couldn't help but stare at the condition of clearing his second trial. He was wondering if the quest was bugged or if his old man was completely messing with him. However, he also knew for a fact that it was impossible for a quest to appear if there was no possibility for it to be cleared. A 5-leaf clover? 13 pondered. Where will I be able to get that? While he was pondering the answer to this question, someone knocked on the door. Jubii opened it to see who it was. When he saw that it was only the inn's helper carrying 2 buckets of water, he stepped aside to allow him to pass through. "Jubii, feel free to look around the town and see if you can find familiar faces," 13 ordered. "Also, if possible, see if you can find where the human slaves are being held captive." The high orc nodded and left the room to do what 13 had asked of him. When only the 3 teenagers were left inside the room, Rianna stood up and picked one of the buckets of water. She then carried it over to the corner of the room and started washing herself. The teenage girl hadn't taken a bath since she arrived in Solterra, so she decided to at least wipe her body clean now that she had the opportunity to do so. "Don't look in my direction, okay?" Rianna told Christopher, who almost choked on his saliva. "Why are you only asking me to not look in your direction?" Christopher asked with a face filled with injustice. "The young master is here as well. Why don't you tell him not to look in your direction?" "Zion is different," Rianna replied. "I can see that he has no interest in girls' bodies. You, on the other hand, are a healthy young man. I'm sure you don't have resistance to ladies." Before Christopher could even object, 13 ordered him to go to the corner of the room to look at the wall. Just like Rianna had said, he had no interest in looking at her juvenile body. He was someone who had seen the bodies of drop-dead gorgeous beauties, who were often referred to as goddesses for thousands of years. Even after becoming a human, he was already immune to the allure and charms of the opposite sex. The rustling of clothes sounded inside the room as Rianna took off her clothes. She then took a cloth and soaked it inside the bucket of water for a while, using it to wipe her skin. While doing this, she was facing 13's and Christopher's direction to make sure that the chubby boy wasn't peeking at her. Although she was strong-willed, she was still a girl. Even she would feel embarrassed if a boy were to look at her. 13 also had his back turned in her direction as he brainstormed about their next course of action. Rianna had been paying close attention to the younger boy and already knew that he was someone very dependable despite his young age. Even now, she was still comparing 13 to the children who were of the same age as him. Even after racking her mind, she couldn't think of anyone who could match his confidence and presence. Is this what a real prodigy is like? Rianna thought as she continued to wipe her body clean. She had seen the children of the 5 monarch clans and the 10 prestigious families, but none of them came close to the boy that was in front of her. After she finished washing her body, She reluctantly pulled her dirty dress back on and sighed sadly. She wished that she could have a proper change of clothes and have her current clothes washed properly. But for now, she would have to settle without these small luxuries, while waiting for the clue that would lead them to the location of the Beacon of Hope. "Do you want to wash yourself too, Christopher?" 13 asked. "Young master, you can wash yourself first," Christopher replied, still looking at the wall in front of him. "I can do it later." "It's fine," 13 replied. "You can wash yourself first. I'm still busy thinking." After hearing 13's words, Christopher went to the corner of the room in order to wash himself. He then looked at Rianna and asked her not to peek at him. "You don't have to worry about that," Rianna replied. "You're not my type at all." "Well, sorry for not being your type," Christopher snorted. "Just don't look okay?" "Yeah. I told you not to worry." Tisk. 13 could only shake his head at the two children, who were acting their age. He felt like a babysitter looking after two kids. But for some reason he didn't find this annoying at all. Jubai returned after 2 hours because he saw a couple of familiar faces in the city. Back in the orc stronghold, he didn't have a lot of friends, but he knew a lot of people. While he was out, he recognized the person walking down the streets alongside the warlord of the city, whose position was equivalent to that of a mayor in barbarian cities. He followed them for a bit without drawing any attention. Since the orcs and barbarians were allies and Groner City was a hub for their interactions, no one thought much of the high orc who seemed to be wandering alone and following their warlord from behind. "I have found other human children, and all of them are currently being sold in the slave market," Jubai reported. "Some of them have already been sold, while the others are being forced to work and follow the orders of their master." There were no slave collars in Solterra, so although the human children had been sold as slaves, they could choose not to obey their new masters. However, this wasn't a problem for barbarians. They would just punish and beat up the unwilling slaves until they became willing. Starvation, pain, and the fear of death were 3 strong factors that could break a person's will, especially if they were only around 13 years old, like the children sent to Solterra. Most of them didn't receive any training, but those who did would only resist for a little while longer before they, too, followed their new master's wishes. At the end of the day, they were still ordinary humans, and they were facing barbarians who were far stronger than they were. Their only hope was that someone would be able to light the beacon of hope and free them from their suffering. "Master, do you want to save the human children?" Jubai asked. "Not really," 13 replied. "But I still need to check to see if there are some familiar-looking people within that group." Truth be told, half of him wished to see his brother, Mikhail, in the barbarian city. If he were there, then 13 would do everything in his power to save him and prioritize his safety at all costs. At the same time, if his brother really were here, then he would wish that Mikhail had been sent to a more peaceful place. 13 had a feeling that Christopher and Rianna's mission was troublesome, and he didn't want his brother to be involved in their messy situation. Christopher and Rianna were conflicted about whether they should ask 13 to save the other children. But both of them understood that even their current situation wasn't that great. Simply put, they weren't in a position to help others since they were barely able to help themselves. "Having more people isn't always a good thing," 13 said as if reading what the two teenagers were thinking. "Do you remember what happened with Villager A? Instead of being thankful, he even instigated others to try and get the resources that Christopher and I worked so hard to get. Fortunately, Harry is of a different breed. If not, I would have asked Brutus and Bruno to pound them all to submission. Besides, as long as we light the beacon of hope, all the wanderers here will return to Pangea. Let us make that our priority, okay?" Christopher, who had been annoyed by Villager A, who went by the name Colbert, sighed in his heart. His young master was right. More didn't always mean better, and what happened back in the Houdini Desert proved that doing good deeds wasn't always rewarded. Rianna also settled down after hearing 13's words. She knew that he was right, so she no longer thought about trying to free the human children from slavery. "As long as we complete the mission, all of them will return to Pangea," Rianna thought. Zion is right. Completing the mission should be our priority. Seeing that his two companions understood what he was trying to say, 13 asked Jubai to guide them to the slave market. Since they were already inside the city, there was no need for them to be tied up. As long as they acted as though the High Orc was their master, no one would try to make things difficult for them. By the way, Jubi, do you know where to find a 5-leaf clover? 13 asked. He wasn't really expecting the High Orc to know the answer to this question, but it wouldn't hurt to ask. A 5-leaf clover? Jubi looked at the 7-year-old with surprise. Young master, I do know where to find it. However, that place is a restricted area. Restricted area? 13's curiosity was piqued after hearing Jubi's reply. He didn't really think that the High Orc would know where he could find a 5-leaf clover, but his firm answer gave him a pleasant surprise. You can find it at the Shaman's Enclave, which is located further east. It's a day of travel from here, Jubi explained. But that area is sacred land to the barbarians. Anyone who enters it without permission will be sentenced to death. However, I do have good news for you, young master. Once every 6 months, a 5-leaf clover will be auctioned at the Lankar auction house. If my memory serves me right, a 5-leaf clover will be auctioned 2 weeks from now. But can I ask you something, young master? What is it? Do you know what the 5-leaf clover is for? I do, 13 replied. Since he had the database of Solterra, he knew what a 5-leaf clover can do, and that was to heal a serious injury. While it might not be able to regrow a severed arm or leg, it could still save someone who had been shot by a bullet or had been stabbed by a sword, granted that they were still alive. This was why it was very precious. Also, the 5-leaf clover wasn't really a plant. It was a crystallized condensation of spiritual energy from an individual with abundant life force and brimming with vitality. This person could only make one of them once a month, making it a life-saving treasure that warriors would love to have, especially when they plan to hunt very strong monsters. Although 13 didn't know why his second trial asked him to get one, now that he had a lead, he might as well see if he could get this precious item. With this thought in mind, he, Christopher, and Rianna continued to trail behind Jubi as they finished their walk to the slave market, where human slaves could be bought for the right price. The slave market was bustling with people. To 13's surprise, humans were not the only race up for sale. Trolls, ogres, and even tigerkins, which had been captured by the barbarians in their raids, were also up for grabs. Although they weren't physically restricted by slave collars, there were beast tattoos that forced the monsters to obey those who would purchase them. These tattoos would be planted on the foreheads of these monsters, and once their new owners had placed a drop of their blood on it, the monster would serve them for exactly 5 years. 13 already knew about this because it was similar to his rune magic. Unfortunately, only advanced rune magic would allow him to enslave monsters. However, Laplace Demon and the One limited the abilities he could use to intermediate rune magic. The beast tattoos also worked on beastkins since they were part beasts. With the tattoos, no matter how smart or ferocious the captured tigerkins were, they would still be bound by the power of the beast tattoo, making them ideal slaves for the barbarians. Christopher looked at the tigerkin ladies who were locked up in cages with great interest. Since these tigerkins had the faces of humans and the ears and tails of tigers, they looked very exquisite. 13 believed that a certain minority on the planet called Earth would definitely love these girls, especially those who had a fetish for monster girls. How much are they? 13 asked in a volume that only Jubi could hear. The tigerkin girls fetch for 100 silver coins, while the men cost around 200 silver coins, Jubi replied. The trolls cost 150 silver coins and the ogres cost 300 coins. As for the human children, they cost 30 silver coins each. When 13 looted the orcs, he was only able to gain a total of 50 silver coins from them, which meant that he only had enough money to buy one human slave. Their group checked all the slaves that were for sale, and just as they had expected, Rianna recognized some of those who had been placed on the wagon that had managed to escape. The other children also recognized 13, Christopher, and Rianna. However, after seeing that they were following a high orc, they assumed that they had already been bought as slaves by it. 2 hours later, they returned to the inn to plan their next move. Master, I think we should aim to buy some tigerkins as slaves, Christopher proposed. They will certainly be helpful to us in battle. I bet you're only interested in those tigerkin girls, right? Rianna sneered. The look on your face as you gawked at them was really funny. Christopher's face turned beet red because he was unable to refute Rihanna's words. There were a few tigerkins who were quite beautiful, and if possible, he wanted them to become their helpers. Jubii, what is the fastest way to earn money? 13 asked. Since the 5-leaf clover would be auctioned in 2 weeks, 13 wanted to see if he could bid for it. Also, he would like to buy a few slaves as well, which would increase the strength of their party. Although they already had Brutus and Bruno, he believed that adding more fighters to their team would increase their chances of completing their mission. Jubii didn't answer right away and pondered for a few minutes before facing the younger boy. There are 3 ways to earn money, Jubii replied. The first method is to hunt monsters to sell their meat and monster parts. The second way is by gambling. Originally, the High Orc wanted to say that there were only 2 ways to earn money, but after careful consideration, he had a feeling that the 7-year-old could clear the 3rd option. The last way is through slave duels, Jubii stated. There is a registration fee of 10 silver per slave. Every win gives you 30 silver. Also, we can also place bets on the slaves that are going to fight. The lower the odds, the higher the winnings. 13 finished what Jubii was going to say next. It is as you say, young master. But we will choose this option to make money. Christopher looked at Rianna with a solemn expression on his face. Your time to shine has come, Christopher stated. Win us a few battles and we'll become rich. Rianna frowned, but she didn't have any problems with this arrangement. Although she didn't seem strong, she was actually trained in martial arts by her grandfather, so she was confident that she could win if the disparity in strength wasn't that much. The one fighting in the slave duel will not be Rianna, 13 stated. When Christopher heard this, his face immediately became pale. Why, young master, are you saying that I will be the one who will do the fighting? Christopher stuttered. Are you planning to bet on my opponent so that we can win money? The 7-year-old was quite amused by the chubby boy's misunderstanding. But, instead of correcting him, 13 only smiled evilly. That doesn't sound like a bad idea, 13 said. All we need to do is bet on your opponent and we will win. Christopher's face turned pale after confirming that his suspicion was correct. He immediately begged and wailed for his young master to reconsider, making Jubii scratch his head. He knew that the younger boy was only teasing his master, but seeing his master act like this was quite embarrassing. Okay, calm down, 13 said as he pushed Christopher's face away, which was now covered in tears and snot. You will not be fighting either, so stop crying. Rianna took a deep breath before clenching her fists in determination. Since this was the fastest way to earn money, she decided to give it everything she had. You're not fighting either, 13 said to the girl who was pumped up to fight. Rianna blinked her eyes in confusion. If not me, then who will fight? Who else? 13 asked in a teasing tone. Of course, it will be none other than me. The young lady looked at 13 in disbelief. Although she had seen him use bows and arrows, she didn't think that the younger boy would propose to fight in the slave duel instead of her. Jubii, on the other hand, smiled faintly. Although he hadn't seen 13 fight all out, he believed that the 7-year-old had what it took to make them all filthy rich. Step right up in the duel arena, the barbarian who was managing the duels shouted. Want to see how good your slave is? Send them here and see them fight. Throw your coins and have a good time. Come inside the duel arena. Jubii walked up to the barbarian and gruffly pushed 13 forward. I want to register my slave to the duel arena, Jubii stated. Here are 10 silvers. The barbarian looked the 7-year-old boy up and down before looking at the high orc. He's a bit too young for duels, the barbarian stated. I've been in this business for a long time, but I haven't seen someone as young as him fight. Won't you reconsider? Hearing those words, 13 looked at the manager with a surprised look on his face. Barbarians were one of the fiercest free humans in Solterra. They liked to brawl and do many other things, so he didn't expect that the man would show him a bit of kindness, despite looking like a brute. No, Jubii replied. I have no need for useless slaves. Take my money and register him. The barbarian sighed before reluctantly nodding his head. He will fight in the third round, the barbarian who went by the name Raldo said. Do you also plan to join the betting? What are his odds? Jubii inquired. Raldo checked who the boy was going to fight before giving his opinion. 1 out of 20, Raldo answered. He will be fighting one of the slaves who was brought here by you guys a few days ago. That boy has 15 wins and 1 loss under him. Jubii pondered a bit before nodding his head. Here, 40 silvers. Jubii handed a pouch containing all the money they possessed. Raldo nodded and took the pouch from the high orc. He then scribbled something on a piece of animal skin, recording Jubii's bet. After that, he motioned for one of his subordinates to bring 13 to the waiting area while he waited for his turn to fight in the arena. Will he really be all right? Rianna asked Christopher in a volume that only the chubby boy could hear. I'm not sure, Christopher replied. But I believe that the young master would not volunteer to do something like this if he isn't confident about winning. Rianna was a bit worried about the younger boy because she didn't know how good 13 was when it came to fighting without weapons. She had only seen him use the bow and arrow, and she had to admit that he was much better than her in that regard. Don't worry, Jubii commented as he led Christopher and Rianna to the stands. I have a feeling that the young master will surprise us. The 3 of them didn't have to wait for long because half an hour later, 13 entered the duel arena looking around his surroundings like a scared brat. When the barbarians saw him, some of them laughed and started to tease the little boy, even calling him names like Shorty. 13's body shuddered as he walked into the arena, acting as if the shouts of the barbarian unnerved him. His pitiful sight made all of them laugh loudly. Half a minute later, his opponent also appeared in the arena. The boy was a head taller than 13, and judging from his stance, he had received at least some proper training. He might be a retainer from one of the influential families, or his family was rich enough to hire a wanderer to train him, 13 thought. Sorry about this, but I have to win. The teenage boy looked at 13 with a confident smile on his face. My name is Wilson. No hard feelings, okay? The younger boy's opponent was one of the wanderers who had appeared near the barbarian territory, and he was captured by one of their hunting parties. 13 nodded timidly, which made Wilson's smile widen. While the 2 boys faced off against each other, Raldo gave the spectators a short period of time to cast their bets. Naturally, all of them placed their bets on Wilson since they didn't want to lose their hard-earned money. Although the winnings they would earn in return were small, they didn't mind it one bit because they thought that they were about to get easy money. A few minutes later, Raldo raised his hand, signaling the referee to announce the start of the match. Just like he had expected, everyone had placed their bets on Wilson. Killing is not allowed, the referee said. Everything else is allowed. If you fall from the arena, lose consciousness, or surrender, you lose. Now fight. After giving the signal to fight, Wilson immediately charged toward the younger boy, intending to end the fight right away. 13, on the other hand, started to run away, making the spectators break out in laughter. Go, little boy. Run. Don't let him catch you, or you'll get beaten up. Run, Forrest, run. Wilson was stronger and much faster than his opponent, so he was able to close the gap in an instant. But just as he was about to grab the younger boy, 13 stumbled on the ground and fell. Since both of them were running at full speed, Wilson wasn't able to stop himself and tripped before skidding to the edge of the arena. But just as he was about to prop himself up, the younger boy pushed him away, making him fall out of the arena. The barbarians who were laughing earlier all froze in place when they realized what happened. *T. No. My money. Damn it. My wife is going to kill me. Why did this happen? Why? While everyone was lamenting their loss, the referee raised the 7-year-old's hand and declared the winner of the match. Winner, Zion. Boo! The barbarians in the stand weren't too happy with how things turned out. Christopher and Rianna, on the other hand, breathed a sigh of relief because they could tell that 13 was relatively unharmed. 1 black coin was equivalent to 100 silver, which Jubii could exchange at the gambling den for money. Since the dueling arena and the gambling arena were under the same management, the black coins were recognized by the entirety of Groner City as a currency. This meant that the coins had purchasing power within the city. In fact, some people exchanged their silver for this currency. It was more convenient than carrying a bag of silvers, which was too heavy. "Congratulations on your winnings," Raldo said as he handed Jubii 8 black coins. "At least that dumb slave is good for something," Jubii snorted as he accepted the black coins. "Do you wish for him to continue fighting?" Raldo asked. "Might as well," Jubii shrugged. "Who is his opponent and what are the odds?" The manager of the arena double-checked his records to see who 13's opponent was. "This time, the odds are 1 in 40, Jubii replied. "His opponent is older than Wilson by 2 years, and he has 42 wins and only 2 losses under his belt." Jubii pondered before looking at the 7-year-old beside him. "Human, if you lose, I'll feed you to the ogres." The younger boy's body uncontrollably shuddered after hearing the high orc's threat. "Master, I can't win," 13 begged. "Please don't kill me." 13 grabbed hold of Jubii's arm, but the high orc pushed him away, making him fall to the ground. "I don't need weaklings," Jubii growled. "Either you win or you die. I'm signing him up for the duel." "Of course," Raldo replied as he took the 8 black coins from Jubii. He originally didn't want to do this, but the people who had lost their money wanted to see 13 fight again to see him suffer. They were still very annoyed that they lost their money, so they wished for him to get beaten up really well. That way, all of them could let go of their frustration. After sealing the deal, Raldo asked for one of his subordinates to drag the still pleading boy away. "Master, I don't want to die. Please have mercy on me." The barbarians who saw this all smiled evilly. They were quite happy with Jubii's decision to feed the boy to the ogres if he lost. Serves him right. Even if it's just a fluke, how dare he make me lose my money? I almost died hunting an ogre for that. He's fighting against Braca? Man, now he's really a goner. That freak likes to break people's limbs before beating them up even after they've lost consciousness. Yeah, he is one sick bastard. But for once, I'll be happy to see him beat up that brat. I feel the same way as you do. Jubii was led by Raldo to a room meant for VIP guests. He had a feeling that things might get messy later, so he decided to take the initiative to place the high orc in a different seat just in case another miracle happened. This time, 13 was about to fight a teenage barbarian boy who was around 15 years old. He wasn't a slave. On the contrary, he was one of the young barbarians who enjoyed fighting against them. For them, fighting slaves was a good way to train themselves and was more effective than looking for monsters to fight in the wild. In fact, many young barbarians do this, and this gained the approval of the adults. Since killing wasn't allowed, and he was a barbarian, Braca was able to get special treatment, allowing him to fight opponents who were weaker than him. He was the duel arena's cleaner, whom they'd call up in order to deal with the troublesome slaves who had offended many people. Since the barbarians wanted to see 13 suffer and bleed, they pressured Raldo to make Braca the boy's opponent if Jubii wished for him to fight again. Now, all of these people were sitting calmly in their seats as they looked at the hateful boy, who made them lose their money. The referee looked at the 7-year-old with pity. He knew how violent Braca could be, and he could already see the sorry state the boy would be in by the time the match ended. 13 had been told by the man who dragged him to the waiting room to say his prayers because he was guaranteed to be a cripple by the time his match ended. Out of curiosity, 13 asked the man whom he was fighting against, and the barbarian was more than happy to scare him out of his wits. Because of this, 13 had a good idea of what kind of person he was going to face. "And now, we present to you Braca," Raldo announced as he pointed at the young barbarian who was walking towards the arena with a wild grin on his face. "Braca! Braca! 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 Braca!" The audience chanted his name, making the barbarian raise both of his hands like a professional wrestler about to fight a championship match. The moment Braca stepped into the arena, he shouted a war cry, making the barbarians cheer. "Boy, I don't know how you managed to piss these people off, but I'm glad you did," Braca stated. "I was already getting bored and wanted to play with a new toy. Don't worry, I won't break you easily." 13 looked visibly shaken. A moment later, he tried to run towards the edge of the arena, intending to jump to end the match in Braca's favor. However, the referee was faster than him, so he caught the 7-year-old firmly in his hands. "Use the cage," one of the barbarians shouted. "That's right. We want the cage. Cage match. Cage match. Cage match." The referee glanced in Raldo's direction as if asking him if they should listen to the audience. The manager shook his head because he believed that this was a very cruel thing to do. He still had his principles despite being the manager of the dueling arena. For him, giving 13 a chance to jump off the arena was the only mercy that he could give him as a human. "Don't worry, everyone," Braca declared. "Even if he jumps off the arena during our match, I will still break his limbs. So just sit back and enjoy the show." "Nice. Good. Ha. Break his legs. Break his arms. Make him suffer." The referee, who was holding on to 13, crouched down to look the boy in the eye. "If you jump off the arena, I will catch you and personally hand you over to Braca," the referee stated. "Give it up. There is no escape for you. Just do your best to land a hit or two against Braca because that might be the last thing you'll ever be able to do before you are crippled." After saying those words, the referee released 13 and walked back to the center of the arena. "Killing is not allowed," the referee shouted. "Everything else is allowed. If you fall from the arena, lose consciousness, or surrender, you lose. Now fight." Braca laughed as he walked towards the boy with confidence. Just like what he did earlier, 13 ran toward the edge of the arena, making the audience start booing. "You won't get away with the same trick twice. Just accept your fate and get your limbs broken. Time to pay for your sins, boy." Braca, who was casually walking toward 13, sneered. "You aren't the first and the last slave who has used this strategy on me," Braca said. "It's no use, boy. Your petty tricks will not work on me." Seeing that the fish wasn't biting the bait, 13 ran along the sides of the arena, remaining at its edges. Braca only laughed and followed his opponent in a leisurely manner. Everyone understood that the barbarian was just playing with his prey, so they just cheered him on. Finally, 10 minutes later, Braca seemed to have gotten a little impatient because the only thing that 13 did was to run away. Because of this, he increased his speed and cornered him. "Where are you going to run now, boy?" Braca asked with his arms spread wide, as he walked towards the 7-year-old, who was standing in one of the corners of the arena. "Playtime's over." The barbarian reached out and grabbed 13's shirt with the intention of raising him high up in the air. Braca enjoyed watching the helplessness of his victims when they were in his grasp, making them feel despair. However, he had just raised 13's body up to his chest level when the younger boy's scared-looking eyes suddenly sharpened as if waiting for that exact moment. A few seconds later, a grunt escaped Braca's lips before his grip on the boy's clothes loosened. 13 had timed his attack perfectly, giving Braca a well-aimed kick on his balls, making him temporarily lose his strength. The barbarian curled his body like a shrimp while holding onto his family jewels with a pale expression on his face. Even if he were stronger than 13, he was still a man, and getting kicked in that place hurt like hell. "You're right," 13 said as he raised his hand. "Playtime's over." Using a palm strike, the 7-year-old accurately broke the barbarian's nose, making Braca grunt in pain. However, this was just the beginning of his suffering. The boy then grabbed the back of Braca's head and forcibly brought it down. 13's knee rose up to meet the barbarian's jaw, making Braca see white as his brain was shaken due to the impact. But even if he was in a daze, he still managed to hear the boy's words in his ears like a devil telling Braca that his soul now belonged to him. "You have crippled countless people, haven't you?" 13 smiled evilly. "Don't worry. Your fate will be worse than theirs. I will cripple you in a way that you will remember for the rest of your life." After saying those words, the younger boy slapped the barbarian's ears with his hands at the same time, making one of Braca's eardrums burst, disorienting him. This was followed up by an uppercut, making the barbarian fall on his back. 13, who wasn't done with his combination attack, raised his foot and stomped on Braca's balls a second time, making sure to crush them completely. The barbarian started to foam in the mouth after 13's deadly combos, forcing the referee to interfere and stop the match. "Winner, Zion." As soon as he declared the boy's victory, Two barbarians ran up into the arena to carry Braca away. The audience was speechless because they didn't expect Braca would actually lose to the 7-year-old, who was walking down from the arena with confidence. His earlier display of cowardice and fear was nowhere to be seen, making Raldo, who watched the battle from start to finish, subconsciously clench his fist. This brat, Raldo thought. He played us all in the palm of his hands. As if sensing his gaze, 13 glanced in Raldo's direction and gave him a faint smile. The manager of the arena felt a cold chill run down his spine the moment he met the boy's gaze. Something was telling him that this incident was not over yet, and he would be seeing the 7-year-old again in the not so distant future. Here are your winnings. Raldo handed the pouch he had prepared for the high orc with a conflicted look on his face. Jubii casually took the pouch and checked its contents. Inside of it were 32 white coins. If one black coin was equivalent to 100 silver coins, one white coin was worth 1,000 silver coins. This meant that 13's group now had 32,000 silver coins in their possession. After what happened with Braca, the odds are no longer in your favor, Raldo commented. I suggest not going to the duel arena for a time. Jubii nodded in understanding. Raldo then glanced at the 7-year-old with awe and admiration, which he rarely showed to someone. You hit it well, you little monster, Raldo smiled bitterly. Still, I look forward to your next duel. Just don't do it anytime soon. 13 gave the duel manager a faint smile as if telling him that he wasn't going to make any promises. Raldo could only shake his head helplessly before heaving a long sigh. Off you go, Raldo stated. Use the back door. I don't want a bloodbath happening on my watch. With the manager's help, 13's group was able to leave the arena without trouble. But, instead of heading back to their inn, the 7-year-old told everyone that they should go to the slave market first to buy slaves. When Christopher heard this, he immediately gave his young master a thumbs up, making Rianna look at him in disdain. She didn't need to be a genius to know what the chubby boy was thinking, making Jubii smile faintly. 13, who now had the funds to buy a few slaves, wasn't stingy and gave Christopher and Rianna 1 white coin each. This would allow them to purchase whatever they wanted, whether it be slaves, weapons, armor, etc. The first time that they visited the slave market, 13 was glad that his brother, Mikhail, wasn't there. There were also no other individuals who belonged to the monarch clans and prestigious families that were for sale. This saddened him a bit because buying them as slaves would mean that those high-ranking families would be indebted to him. However, there was one slave that caught 13's attention when they went there the first time. Because of this, he wanted to earn money right away so that he could buy that slave before others beat him to it. Good, 13 thought as his gaze landed on one of the cages in the slave market. He's still here. The 7-year-old didn't hesitate and went to find the slave master so that he could purchase the slave that caught his eye. Mister, my master wants to buy that slave over there, 13 said as he pointed in one of the cages in front of him. You want to buy that troublesome thing? The slave master asked with an amused look on his face. Well, I guess breaking his will is good entertainment. However, he is a bit special. He gave us a lot of trouble, so it will cost you 300 silvers to buy him. I don't mind, Jubii replied. I will let my slave train him, so make him that tigerkin's master. You are one interesting buyer, I like. The slave market found this amusing because a 7-year-old was going to train a beastkin who was several years older than him. Raising his hand, the slave master asked 2 of his subordinates to open the cage and restrain the tigerkin that 13 had chosen. Let me go. The tigerkin roared in anger as he struggled to escape from the 2 slave traders who had him firmly in their grasp. Shut up, you punk! One of the slave traders shouted as he and his comrade forced the tigerkin to kneel on the ground, so his head would be branded by the slave tattoo. The tigerkin was still young and, judging by his appearance, was around 13 to 15 years old. The reason why 13 chose him was his eyes. Those eyes filled with life, determination, anger, and stubbornness that made 13 immediately know what kind of person he was. 13 hated these people with a vengeance after facing off against them. Yes, the boy in front of him had the makings of a hero. And for him, Enslaving a future hero was a very amusing thing. Kukuku, 13 laughed internally. I'm going to enjoy breaking you. He understood that these people were protected by fate, and nothing bad would really happen to them until they had accomplished their destinies. For them, facing these kinds of hardships was just part of their journey to reach the pinnacle of the world, and put their names in the pages of history. 13 already understood that his father, the system god, had given him a hidden class as well. And this hidden class was none other than cannon fodder. Similar to the hero and the villain, these classes were hidden within the very soul of a person, allowing them to fulfill their destinies in each of their lifetimes. If he was going to beat the cycle of fate, he needed to understand its rules. What better way to understand it than capture a hero and make him his first guinea pig? Stop! The tigerkin roared as the slave master pressed his finger over his forehead. I'll kill you! I'll kill you! I swear I will kill you! Yeah, that's what all of you slaves say before you are branded. The slave master was already used to such threats, so it didn't matter how many times the tigerkin cursed him. A few seconds later, a slave tattoo appeared on the tigerkin's forehead, marking him as a true slave. Put a drop of your blood on his forehead and the contract will be sealed, the slave master stated. He even handed 13 a dagger which the boy could use to prick his finger to draw blood. 13 accepted the dagger and pricked his thumb. He then unceremoniously pressed it in the forehead of the tigerkin, making the latter scream, as tears streamed down the side of his face. The branding was a very painful experience, as if to make the slave understand that his fate was no longer in his hands. A minute later, the tigerkin was released by the two slave traders, making his body collapse on the ground. Even so, the tigerkin didn't lose consciousness as he stubbornly raised his head to glare at the 7-year-old boy, who was now his master. I'll kill you, the tigerkin said through gritted teeth, making the corner of 13's face curl up into a smile. Instead of answering the tigerkin, the younger boy stepped on the tigerkin's head, grinding the latter's face on the ground. Good, 13 said as he put more pressure on his foot. Breaking you won't be fun otherwise. The slave master gave the 7-year-old a thumbs up in his heart because he liked sadistic people. They were his biggest customers, and he had a feeling that, before the day was over, several of his slaves would be purchased, earning him a lot of profit for his troubles. You are not allowed to commit suicide, or anything that will directly or indirectly end your life. You will forever be loyal to me, and obey my every word as if it was the reason for your existence. You will not hurt or harm me or any of my allies in any way, whether it be directly or indirectly. You will always do things to further my interest, and will not do anything that might harm my interest. This was the first batch of orders that 13 had given his slave, and the slave master made sure to take down notes after hearing the orders from the 7-year-old. Amazing! All of these orders summed up the things that a good slave must do for his master. The slave master looked at 13 with a satisfied look on his face. Would you like to join the slave industry? I can make you my right-hand man if you're interested. I'll think about it, 13 replied, still keeping his foot pressed on the back of the tigerkin's head, while continuing to grind his servant's face to the ground. He then glanced at the chubby boy, who was looking at the tigerkin with pity. Christopher, aren't you going to train slaves as well? 13 asked. You better not waste Master Jubiai's generosity. Alright, I almost forgot. Christopher finally remembered that he was also allowed to purchase slaves, so he hurriedly went to the tigerkin cages to purchase the most beautiful tigerkins that were for sale. Rianna also decided to purchase some slaves. However, instead of beastkins and monsters, she decided to purchase the human slaves, using all of the money that was given to her to free them. 13 looked at Rianna with a calm expression on his face. He already knew that the young lady wanted to free the children that were being sold as slaves, so he purposely gave her exactly 1,000 silver coins to purchase them all. Each human child only cost 30 silver coins, so she was able to buy all 33 of them, with a few silver coins to spare. 13 didn't treat Rianna as his direct subordinate like Christopher. He knew that the girl was only accompanying him because she believed that she had a higher chance of completing her mission by being with him. 13 understood that, so he allowed her to do what she wanted to do. But, since she was under his wing, he decided to teach her a lesson, and that lesson was taking responsibility. Since she had chosen to purchase all the human children, she would need to be responsible for them. He could tell that Rianna had the makings of a leader, and if possible, he wanted to let her remain a compassionate person as she grew up. However, he also understood that this was impossible. The moment she entered society, she would understand just how corrupt the world was. 13 could tell that she was brought up in a loving family because, unlike the children of the monarch clans and the prestigious families, Rianna's gaze was pure. She wasn't exactly innocent, but she still believed that hard work and good deeds would be rewarded. This was why he wanted to teach her a lesson about responsibility while she was still young. By doing so, her pure heart would be protected for a few more years before reality gave her a good slap on the face. The slave master didn't even bother to assist Christopher and Rianna with their purchase, allowing his servants to assist them instead. He couldn't explain it, but for some reason he felt attracted to 13. Although the boy was simply standing and stepping on the tigerkin's head, he couldn't help but feel that the boy was overflowing with charisma. Because of this, he decided to walk towards him and whisper something in his ear. "Kid, do you want to take a look at my special slave collection?" the slave master asked. "Originally, I was planning to sell them off to the auction, but I'll give you special treatment and allow you to purchase one of them for a fair price. So, how about it?" 13's impression of the slave master went up by a notch. He had been to many worlds where slavery was rampant, so he didn't think of the slave traders as bad guys. In fact, one of his hosts was also a slave trader who sold slaves to people whom he believed would take good care of them. There were always two sides of a coin. Depending on how one looked at it, there were many stories where slaves actually had a happy ending and found joy despite the circumstances they were in. He was once a system. In a world where morality was only a thin line away from depravity, he knew more than anyone else that not all bad guys were bad, and not all good guys were good. "Sure, I'll take you up on your offer, mister." 13 looked at the slave master in askance. Norris said. "You can just call me Sir Norris." "In that case, just call me Zion." "It is a pleasure doing business with you, Sir Norris." "Good. Come this way, Zion." The slave master led 13 inside his compound where he stored some of the most unique slaves and creatures that he had caught during his journey across the Houdini Desert and the Sumatran Kingdom. "Remember, you can only choose one, Zion," Norris said. "So choose wisely." The boy nodded and began to check the cages one by one. There he saw many exotic beasts of different shapes and sizes. There were even rank 5 monsters for sale, which made the 7-year-old arch an eyebrow. Christopher will definitely drool after he sees this, 13 thought as he looked at an Empyrean baby boar, whom he believed was only a few months old. However, even though it was young, it was already a rank 5 monster. Empyrean boars were jinns. They were stronger than most creatures, and an adult boar was a rank 7 monster. These monsters could grow up to 5 meters, and their tusks were very good material for crafting weapons. In fact, the mythical weapons that Arthur and Lady Callista currently possessed were crafted from the tusks of Empyrean boars. After looking at the little boar, 13 shifted his gaze to the other monsters that were for sale. He even saw some nymphs and a dryad among them, which would make Christopher ditch his tigerkin girls in order to buy them in a heartbeat. The boy only finished looking at half of Norris' collection when he felt a strong attraction pulling him towards a cage. He didn't know why, but something was compelling him to go to the farthest end of the room and ignore the rest of the amazing creatures that were up for sale. This was the first time that 13 experienced something like this, so he followed his gut instinct. Inside a glass case, and resting on a branch, was a black snake that was only half a meter long. Sensing that someone was looking at it, the snake raised its head. It flicked its tongue in the boy's direction as if trying to discern why this human was looking at it. 13 then placed his hand over his chest because he felt something warm spreading inside his body. He didn't understand what this feeling was, but if he had to put a description on it, it would be similar to finding a long-lost friend that he hadn't seen for a long time. If the boy only opened his status page to check why he was feeling this way, he would have noticed that one of his unique abilities, Destiny Bond, was blinking in gold colors. The unique ability kept on blinking for a few more seconds before it returned to its original state. Norris, who had noticed the sudden change in the boy's expression, smiled. He saw everything from start to finish, and couldn't help but remember the words that the shaman of their clan had told him when she entrusted him with the black snake that was now part of his collection. Whoever this black snake recognizes as its owner is a friend of our clan, the shaman said. Form connections with that person because one day, it might be our turn to ask for their help. Norris walked towards the 7-year-old, who couldn't keep his eyes off the glass cage where the black snake was resting. Elder, I think I found the person you were talking about back then, Norris mused. Don't worry. I will keep your words in my heart and ensure that he becomes a friend of ours. 13 and the black snake looked at each other for nearly 5 minutes before the boy started to stir. It was as if he just woke up from a trance. But the first thing he did was to place his right hand over his chest as if he was in pain. The snake tilted its head to the side as if wondering what was happening to the human in front of it. The slave master, Norris, walked up to the younger boy from behind with a businesslike smile. Beautiful, isn't she? Norris asked. Do you know what she is? Domini mortis, 13 replied in a heartbeat. The most poisonous snake in Solterra despite only being a rank 1 monster from birth to death. As I thought, Norris replied. You are very knowledgeable. Are you really 7? 13 didn't reply, nor turned his head to look at the slave master behind him. He just continued to stare at the black snake in front of him as if trying to understand why he was feeling a sense of familiarity that he couldn't describe. 2 minutes later, 13 reluctantly tore his gaze away from the snake and looked at the slave master behind him. How much? 13 asked. He didn't need to specify what he intended to buy because it was already very obvious. 5,000 silver coins, Norris answered. Although it is a rank 1 monster, it is extremely rare. I just happened to get this one from an acquaintance, so its price is more expensive than most. I already gave you a friend discount with that price. Deal, 13 said. You can take the money from my master, Jubii. Norris smiled after hearing the boy's words. He was a slave trader, and he was very good at reading people. It was very obvious from the start that the one calling the shots was the 7-year-old boy instead of the high orc that was accompanying him. In fact, Norris wouldn't be surprised if the real slave was the orc, and not the boy who was standing before him. But he kept his thoughts to himself and simply nodded his head. Handling it is very dangerous, so let's perform the master and slave contract first, Norris stated. Raising his hand, the tattoo on the black snake's head glowed faintly, putting the snake into a trance. Handling a very poisonous snake like the Domini mortis was not an easy task. It was fast, and its venom was more potent than the venom of the yellow-striped dusk brute. In fact, if it was able to bite a rank 4 or rank 5 monster several times, those monsters would die, despite the fact that they were 3 to 4 ranks higher than the Domini mortis. The Masters of Death, this is what these black snakes were called. It doesn't matter who they bit. The moment their fangs sank into their victims' bodies, it was all over for that creature. Their poison was also the greatest antivenom of all once it was purified, or used as an ingredient for alchemy. Drop your blood on its forehead, but be careful, Norris said. Don't press your thumb on its head like what you did with the tigerkin. Just drop the blood on top of its head, and pull your hand back as soon as possible. The slave master was putting all of his concentration into keeping the black snake in place, so that it wouldn't accidentally attack the boy. Nodding his head, 13 did as he was told and dropped the blood on top of the head of the black snake, before pulling his hand away. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. Unlike what happened with the tigerkin earlier, 13 felt a very strong connection to the snake as if it had become part of his body. As if to confirm his suspicion, a few rows of text appeared in front of him, asking for his input. Would you like to give the Domini mortis a name? Tiona, 13 replied before he could even think of a name. The boy's eyes widened in shock because he only realized what had happened, after it already happened. The black snake, who was now named Tiona, nodded its head as if recognizing the name that its master had given it. Through their connection, The boy felt something akin to happiness coming from the Domini Mortis that had now become his slave. 13 then opened his status page to check his status page just to be sure that he wasn't imagining things. Name, Zion Leventis. Age, 7 years old. Race, human. Skills, none. Items, none. Avatars, none. Permanent debuff. Rank ban. Skill ban. Item ban. Avatar ban. Unique abilities, universal language proficiency, destiny bond, rune magic, intermediate. Beast companion, Tiona. It's there, 13 mused. But why? When he had enslaved the Tigerkin earlier, there were no notifications that appeared, and no changes happened on his status screen. In fact, there wasn't supposed to be any notifications because having a slave was not part of the program that the Laplace demon and the One had made for Wanderers. This was why even if they had 100 slaves, there would be no notifications, and the names of the slaves wouldn't appear in their status page. Only the names of avatars would register because they were the only type of monsters that the Law of Wanderers recognized. In short, there was not supposed to be a beast companion category appearing on his status page because it was only exclusive to those who had the hidden class of beast tamer. 13 was definitely not one, so he didn't understand why this was happening. I'll ask Laplace Demon and the One next time I see them, 13 thought. While the 7-year-old was deep in thought, Norris asked 13 to order the black snake not to bite him. Now that the Domini Mortis had a new owner, it would no longer listen to Norris. Since there was a chance that the black snake would attack him after it was freed from the cage, he immediately asked 13 to give the snake in order as a precaution. Don't bite the slave master as well as his subordinates, 13 said. Do not bite any of my family, friends, and subordinates. Unless I order you to, do not take the initiative to attack. Do I make myself clear? The black snake nodded, acknowledging 13's orders. After confirming that the order had been properly given, Norris opened the glass cage, allowing the black snake to crawl out of it. 13 extended his hand, and the snake immediately crawled up towards his shoulder. After that, it coiled itself around the boy's neck like a black collar. Well then, Zion, it's a pleasure doing business with you, Norris said as he extended his hand towards the boy in a handshake. I hope we continue this business relationship in the future. The Domini Mortis, Tiona, hissed at the slave master, but didn't make any move to bite him. Clearly, it didn't like the slave master and would have probably attacked him if 13 had not ordered it to not carelessly attack anyone without his permission. I do hope that we will be able to do business again in the future, 13 shook Norris' hand. I just need to save up more money so I can buy your other wares. Of course, money is always welcome, Norris chuckled before leading 13 back to his friends, who had also finished buying the slaves they wanted using the money that he had shared with them. 13 glanced at the teenage boys and girls behind Rianna. Just as he expected, the girl didn't hesitate to buy all of the human children from the slave market. These kids were looking at her with gratitude, but there were a few strong-willed people who didn't like owing her a favor. The boy then shifted his attention to Christopher, who currently had a big smile on his face. Originally, 13 thought that Christopher would purchase teenage Tigerkins as his slaves, but the two ladies who were currently pampering him were Tigerkins who were over 30 years old. They might not be the most beautiful among the Tigerkin slaves, but they were no doubt the ones who had a motherly appeal, especially in their chest area, which he estimated were at least D cups. However, Christopher didn't only buy beastkin girls. He bought 2 ogres as well. All in all, Rianna got 33 human slaves, while Christopher got 2 Tigerkins and 2 ogres. To his surprise, the 2 ogres were actually rank 3 monsters, which were stronger than Brutus and Bruno. Since the ogres were relatively strong, they cost 400 silver coins each, while the 2 Tigerkins were 100 silver coins each. You did well, Christopher, 13 praised the chubby boy who scratched his head shyly because of 13's praise. He then shifted his gaze at Rianna before smirking. They are your responsibility, okay? 13 stated. I don't want to babysit you guys. The teenagers behind Rianna all looked at the 7-year-old in confusion. They didn't understand why someone younger than them would talk about babysitting them. Usually, it was the older ones who babysat younger people. Actually, I plan to make a hunting party, Rianna stated. But I have no money to arm them. And you want to ask me for money? Yes. Rianna showed an embarrassed expression because she knew that 13 had no obligation to help her. However, since she already spent most of the money that 13 had given her, there was nothing else she could do but ask him for funds. 13 rubbed his chin as he looked at Rianna with a mischievous smile. I'll give you 100 silver, 13 said. But that's not enough, Rianna replied. I know. Then why? 13 placed his hands on his waist and looked at Rianna with a solemn expression on his face. They are your responsibility, so you need to deal with them yourself, 13 stated. Rianna lowered her head because she knew that the boy in front of her was right. This made the teenagers frown. Judging by their exchange, they immediately understood that the one calling the shots was none other than the 7-year-old, and this fact surprised them greatly. Rianna, did you forget how I earned money? 13 asked. What is stopping you from doing the same? The young lady, who was at a loss about what to do, suddenly had a realization after hearing the younger boy's words. You mean? Rianna muttered. Exactly, 13 answered. Rianna's expression became serious as she considered fighting in the duel arena. Although she knew hand-to-hand fighting techniques, she wasn't confident that she would be able to perform as brilliantly as 13. The 7-year-old had no plans to duel again anytime soon since he was currently a hot topic among the regulars of the arena. Even Raldo asked him to keep a low profile for the time being and wait until things settled down. Rianna was about to say something when 13 raised a hand to stop her. I think you are misunderstanding something, Rianna, 13 stated. Who said that you would have to be the one to do the fighting? Aren't they your slaves? I'm sure someone can do a better job in fighting in the arena aside from you. The young boy then raised his hand and pointed at one of the boys behind Rianna. For example, that guy, 13 said. Let him fight in the arena, then you bet 100 silver on him. If he wins, then your group will have the money you need to buy a few weapons, so that you can hunt monsters. They are now your people, so they should help you. Don't be stuck up and carry all the responsibilities on your own. I mean, do you see me handling everything myself? You have to split the roles among your team. That is what it takes to become a leader. Since Rianna already bought the other wanderers, 13 thought that it would be best if he taught her a little bit about how to handle subordinates. He didn't want her to end up as a martyr who always carried heavy burdens on her shoulders so that everyone could be happy. The guy whom 13 pointed at sized up the 7-year-old with a calm expression on his face. He noticed the black snake that was coiled on the boy's neck and recognized it for what it truly was. This brat is not someone simple, the teenage boy thought. Well, there is another matter that you should consider, 13 stated. Aside from arming them, you also need to find a place for them to stay. The inn will not be enough to house them all. Besides, I will not be giving you money for their accommodations either. Rianna frowned because she hadn't thought that far. The only thing on her mind was to free all the slaves out of pity. But now that they were free, she couldn't possibly let them wander off on their own. Although they bore the mark of slaves with the red dots on their foreheads, that didn't mean that no one in the city would try to harm them. They were, after all, slaves. The lowest of the lows, and they had no human rights to speak of. What should I do? Rianna asked with a beet-red face. 13 didn't answer her. Instead, he looked at Norris, who was watching this scene with amusement. Do you know of any place where we can fit at least 50 people? 13 asked. The slaves can sleep in the stables or the backyard of the property. What a coincidence, one of our warehouses is now free after many slaves had been bought from my collection, Norris replied. It's only 5,000 silvers for 1 month. No discounts. 13 pondered for a bit before nodding his head. Deal, 13 replied. It's good doing business with you. Norris was genuinely happy because he was able to earn so much in a single day. Earlier, 13 had 32,000 silver coins. But now, his wealth had decreased to 19,000 silver coins. Although it was still a substantial amount, he believed that it would not be enough to get the 5-leaf clover, which would be auctioned 2 weeks from now. It will be a bit tight, but it's not impossible, 13 thought. Since he had already spent good money on these wanderers, He would certainly squeeze them dry until he got his money's worth back and more. After getting the payment for 13's purchases, Norris led them to one of the warehouses that he owned in the city. It was quite big and had 2 stories. It had more than enough space to house 50 people and a few ogres. There were ready-made beds to sleep on. Although they were crude, it proved that this was a place used to store slaves before they were sold at the slave market. Why don't you just go to the countryside and live a peaceful life? Why must you insist on doing this, Tiona? Going to the countryside and living a peaceful life sounds good, 13. But I can't abandon everyone. A beautiful young lady with long black hair and purple eyes looked at the army camp in the distance. Behind her, countless snakes of different shapes and sizes gathered, ready to attack at her command. She was one of the captains of the demon army, and she was tasked to attack the main army of the Alliance before sunrise. Although she knew that this was impossible to win, her face was calm as if she had already prepared herself for the worst. Why not? 13 asked. This is a suicide mission, Tiona, and you know it. You are just being used as a pawn to divert the hero's attention to this place while that bastard conquers another kingdom. 13, you already know the answer, Tiona replied. He's holding my family hostage. If I don't do as he says, then they will be killed. If you die here, then they will also lose their value. The demon lord will kill them once you are dead. At least, as long as you are alive, he will not readily kill them. You're a useful tool for him to expand his empire. Can't you see that? You're just talking about an if scenario, 13. And even if you are right, I can't abandon my family. The demon lord might not kill them, but he will surely make them suffer. I won't be able to sleep at night knowing that they are suffering because of me. Tiona, this is madness. You'll die if you attack that camp right now. I know. This is why I'm doing it. What are you talking about? 13 shouted. Leave this place now, Tiona. 13, if there is a next life, I hope we can meet again in a peaceful world. If that were to happen, I'd be truly happy. Don't do this, Tiona. Please don't do this. The young lady smiled before raising her hand. Her army charged forward like a raging tide, attacking the rear of the main army of the Alliance. The battle lasted for an hour, with the enemies sustaining huge casualties. Tiona managed to injure the hero, but that was all. The enemy was simply too many, and they overpowered her in the end. Serves you right, you be *each, the sorceress of the hero party sneered as she stepped on the young lady's head, who was bleeding to death. You're a human, and you chose to side with the demons. This is a fitting end for traitors like you. I will take your head and put it on a spike, the hero said as he raised his sword. I'll make sure that the demon army knows that you died a dog's death. Tiona didn't reply and simply closed her eyes. She was really tired and simply wished for everything to end. 13. I'm here, Tiona. Thank you for everything and I'm sorry. I wasn't able to protect my family. I wasn't able to protect you. Let's meet again. Make sure to find me again, okay? I will find you, I promise. So wait for me. Thank you. 13. I'm glad you chose me as your host. When the young lady's neck was cleanly cut off from her body, cheers resounded within the camp of the Alliance. 13, whose connection with his host had been severed after her death, hurriedly encased his master's soul in his protective embrace. He would personally take her soul to the cycle of reincarnation and would not allow her to suffer any longer. This was his last duty as a system who had lost yet another host due to the machinations of fate. Somewhere in Groner City, 13 felt something touching the side of his face, which made him open his eyes. With the faint light of the lamplight inside his room, he saw the black snake, Tiona, using her tail to wipe his face. Since he had just woken up, it took him a while to understand what was happening. Only after he raised his hand to touch the side of his face did he notice that his cheeks were wet. I cried. 13 looked at his hands in disbelief. But it didn't take long for him to realize that tears were still continuing to fall from his eyes. It must be because of that dream, 13 thought as he remembered the dream he had just now. The black snake crawled up his body and started to flick her tongue on his cheeks as if she wanted to taste the tears that were falling on the side of her master's face. 13 lightly rubbed Tiona's chin while he was deep in his thoughts. Maybe I named you Tiona because my previous host was a snake tamer, 13 muttered. I wonder, will I be able to meet her again someday? He didn't know the answer to this question, but he sincerely hoped that their paths would cross again. He promised her that he would come to find her, and 13 always kept his promises. It's still dark, 13 said as he lay down on his bed. Let's sleep for a little bit longer, Tiona. The black snake nodded. She coiled herself on his pillow and slept beside his face. A few minutes later, the boy once again fell asleep, and this time, he dreamed a dream where he and his previous host, Tiona, were walking hand in hand in a flower field. The young lady had a sweet, peaceful expression on her face as if she had been freed from all the worries and hardships of the world. 13, thank you for always being by my side, Tiona said. Now, it's my turn to help you. What are you talking about? 13 asked. You should just enjoy life and live it to the fullest. You deserve it. How can I possibly enjoy my life when I know that you are suffering? If I am going to enjoy life, we must do it together. You're still as stubborn as ever. Suffering? Is that some kind of joke? How can someone like me suffer? I make others suffer. Not the other way around. Tiona giggled before holding 13's hand to pull him like a spoiled child. Just remember, okay? This time, it will be me who will be supporting you and not the other way around, Tiona stated. So, don't be afraid to knock down everyone in your way. If we can't really beat them, we could always run, right? 13 smirked. Good. Now you know how to run away. You should have done that back then. Tiona stuck her tongue out before running ahead, leaving 13 behind. Come and catch me, slowpoke. Tiona taunted. I'm confident in my speed to run away. The young man shook his head helplessly before running after her. Let's put that speed of yours to the test, 13 smirked. Here I come. Soon, Tiona's laughter echoed in the flower field. A laughter that sounded like music in his ears. 13 decided to spend 1,000 silver coins in order to procure food and other necessities to make the lives of his slaves, the people under his wing, a little more comfortable. He had a feeling that their quest, which was lighting the beacon of hope, was closely related to the previous Valbara kingdom, which had now become the Sumatran kingdom. With this in mind, 13 decided to make Groner City his base of operations. Not only was it close to the Houdini Desert, but it would also allow them to travel by boat to reach the other places within the Sumatran kingdom. Also, the city would provide them with all the necessities they needed like food, weapons, and armor, making it their ideal place to create their base. Currently, 13, Christopher, and Rianna were inside his room because he planned to give the young lady some advice on how to properly manage the people under her. Since you are the one who freed them, they will listen to you more than they'll listen to me, 13 stated. So, you will be the one to manage them. I told you yesterday that you need to earn money. The fastest way to do that is to let them fight in the slave duel. You are their leader, so you mustn't get hurt in any way. Delegate duties to them to split the work in maintaining the warehouse. Make others clean this place, while others do other chores like buying food, etc. Remember that they are wanderers, so they are not babies that you have to take care of 24/7. Right now, they are just waiting for an opportunity to leave. But since they are afraid that they might get hunted down if they leave the city, they are relying on your kindness. Let's keep things simple for them. Those who don't work won't eat. If they don't like it, they can leave. Simple as that. Rianna nodded her head in understanding. After a night's rest, she realized that she didn't really think things through and just followed what she thought was right. Now that she understood that she alone wouldn't be able to take care of 33 teenage boys and girls, who were the same age as her, she needed to change her ways of doing things. Young master, what about us? Christopher asked. Us? We're going to the duel arena, of course, 13 replied. I bought a slave after all. It will be a pity if I don't put him to good use. Christopher and Rianna couldn't help but shudder after seeing the evil smile on 13's face. They offered a silent prayer to the pitiful tigerkin, who would soon realize that his new master was someone who mustn't be provoked no matter what. Duel arena. Raldo looked at the 7-year-old whom he had asked to keep a low profile due to the incident that happened in the duel arena. Only a day had passed since his duel against Braca, yet the boy was back again to cause trouble. "Don't worry, I didn't come here to fight," 13 said. "I came here to make him fight." The boy used his thumb to point at the tigerkin behind him, who was busy glaring at his master. Raldo breathed a sigh of relief because he thought that the boy would insist that he fight again in a duel. "Let me see who is on the waiting list," Raldo said as he checked the scroll in his hands. "By the way, what is his name?" "My name is Percival," the tigerkin declared. "His name is Taiga," 13 stated. "Taiga then," Raldo said as he scribbled the tigerkin's name in his scroll. Since he is a tigerkin, his opponents will be trolls, ogres, or other tigerkins. There are a few candidates here, so I'll let you choose his opponent. Percival, whose name had been changed to Taiga, growled. However, before he could do anything, 13 glanced in his direction and said, "Kneel." The tigerkin gritted his teeth as he endured the mind-numbing pain in his head as he tried to defy his master's orders. Seeing his resistance, the 7-year-old smirked before crossing his arms over his chest. "Taiga, if you don't obey my orders, you will suffer because of the slave tattoo," 13 stated. "If you continue to resist, you will lose your mind, you know? I'd rather lose my mind than obey you." Percival growled as his body shook uncontrollably from trying to defy his master's order. "I see. So you mean you would rather die than obey me, right?" 13 asked as he once again checked the contents of the scroll in his hand. "That's what you call warrior's pride, right? Well, I don't really mind if you die. There are many other slaves that I can purchase from the slave market. I just find it pitiful that your life will end here without even being able to achieve your dreams and aspirations. It just means that you are fated to die like a dog, not a warrior." A moment later, 13 heard a thud, making him look at the kneeling tigerkin in front of him. Blood seeped at the corner of Percival's lips after biting his lip too hard. Originally, he didn't mind dying because he was aspiring to be a warrior of his clan. However, 13's words had shaken him. If he were to die now, he would indeed be dying like a dog, not like a warrior. For the tigerkins, dying in battle was a great honor. As an aspiring warrior, he had made a vow to himself that if he were to die, he would be dying on the battlefield, facing their clan's enemy in mortal combat. "I can't die here." Percival clenched his fists tightly. "Mother is waiting for me." Seeing that the tigerkin had quieted down, 13 pointed at a name in the scroll, which made Raldo arch an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" Raldo asked. "You can pick a more favorable matchup for him." "No," 13 replied. "I want him to be Taiga's first opponent." Percival glared at the boy who refused to use his real name. However, he didn't say anything else and simply clenched his fists tighter. "You think you can earn money from me?" Percival sneered in his heart. "I'll make you regret your decision of belittling me." 13 gave his slave a sidelong glance before turning around. He was afraid that if he stared at Percival long enough, the smirk he was trying so hard to hold back would appear on his face. "Silly boy," 13 thought. "Do you really think I don't know what you're thinking? You're 1,000 years too early to scheme against me." The tigerkin and the 7-year-old boy both laughed in their hearts. However, only time would tell who among the two of them would truly have the last laugh. The duel arena was as rowdy as usual. But this time, 13 wasn't the one who was going to fight. Instead, he was one of the spectators that were about to watch the battle. As a safety precaution, Raldo had given 13 a black robe with a hood to wear, as well as a mask to keep his face hidden. Although it would be easy for the other barbarians to recognize him because Jubii, Christopher, and Rianna were with him, they wouldn't take the initiative to cause trouble as long as they couldn't see his face. The duel arena was under the city lord's authority, so anyone who caused trouble would not only be kicked out of the arena, but the city as well. Even though they still carried a grudge against 13, they would not cause trouble in fear of being blacklisted in the city, or worse, thrown to prison. A few minutes later, Percival, Taiga, showed up in the arena. The barbarians cheered because they liked to see the tigerkins fight in battle. For a brief moment, Percival's and 13's gazes met. The tigerkin had a calm expression on his face, but deep inside he was laughing because he saw that the brat had placed a bet on him for 1,000 silver coins. "Prepare to lose your money, fool," Percival sneered in his heart. "I'll suck you dry until you become bankrupt." A moment later, the tigerkin's opponent appeared in the arena. Percival's expression became serious when he sensed that the ogre was a rank stronger than him. The tigerkin was still young, and was similar to Christopher's age. He was a rank 1 tigerkin, and his opponent was a rank 2 ogre. Neither of them were wielding any weapons, but in a contest of strength, the ogre would beat him hands down. But Percival had something that the ogre didn't, and that was speed. All tigerkins were blessed with speed, dexterity, and strength, so he was confident that he could outrun and outmaneuver his foe. "Killing is not allowed," the referee shouted. "Everything else is allowed. If you fall from the arena, lose consciousness, or surrender, you lose. If you purposely kill your opponent, you will also be executed. If you kill them by accident, the jury will decide your fate. Now fight." As soon as the signal was given, the ogre roared and charged at the tigerkin with its fists raised high. Percival knew that if he took that blow head-on, even if he didn't die, he would get seriously injured or, worse, end up crippled. Because of this, he had no choice but to evade and look for a better opportunity to execute his plan. The tigerkin also charged at the ogre, instead of evading. When the two were only a few meters apart, Percival lowered his body and slid between the ogre's feet, catching it by surprise. The tigerkin then hurriedly stood up before unleashing a kick on the ogre's balls, making it grunt in pain. However, as a creature that specialized in strength, and with skin that was as hard as a rock, Percival's attack wasn't enough to cripple it completely. The only thing he succeeded in doing was making the ogre angry. "Come, you overgrown baboon," Percival shouted, making all the barbarians laugh. They really liked entertaining battles like this because it makes their blood boil, as if they were the ones fighting. The ogre kept on attacking Percival, but the tigerkin was as slippery as an eel. Even so, the brute monster wasn't as dumb as it looked. Just when Percival thought that he had managed to dodge successfully, the ogre made a backhand strike, which he barely managed to block with his arms. The strength of the backhand blow was enough to send Percival flying outside of the arena, which made the ogre raise his hand in triumph. The barbarians also cheered because it was a very exciting fight. Percival slowly propped himself up from the ground, while doing his best to hide the smile on his face. This was all part of his plan, making it look as if the ogre had managed to land a critical blow on his body. From start to finish, he was observing the ogre's fighting prowess, and gaining an understanding of how strong his blows were. Since the backhand blow was done out of instinct, the strength behind it wasn't that strong. The reason why Percival was sent flying was due to the fact that he timed his jump backwards to be at the same time that the ogre's hand touched his body. This made it look like he was hit, but in truth he was mostly unharmed. "Ha! You should have ordered me to win," Percival laughed as he glanced at the boy in the spectator's seat. Due to 13 wearing a mask, he was unable to tell what his reaction was. However, he believed that the boy was gnashing his teeth in anger because he lost his money. After the ogre was declared as the winner, Percival was escorted out of the arena. "Let's go," 13 said as he also stood up. Christopher, Rianna, Jubii, as well as 3 teenage boys, whom they brought along to the arena to watch the duels, followed behind him. The reason why they brought the 3 boys was to let them watch the battle because they, too, would be fighting very soon. This was to show them what kind of opponents they would be facing, which made their faces turn grim. As a system who had witnessed many warriors in his lifetime, 13 knew that the 3 boys had received proper training. 2 of them were even stronger than Rianna. Because of this, 13 planned to bring their arrogance down a peg by letting them fight in the arena. Of course, since Rianna would be betting for them to win, he would make sure to choose opponents that were evenly matched with them. When they arrived at Raldo's office, Percival was already there. The moment the tigerkin saw his master, a sneer appeared on his face because he wanted to taunt 13. But the boy ignored him. Instead, he went straight to Raldo and reached out his hand. Raldo then handed him 1 red coin, which made Percival's eyes widen in shock. A red coin was worth 50,000 silver coins, which meant that instead of losing money, his master gained more money due to his defeat. Silly tiger, 13 said as he removed the mask on his face. He gave the dumbfounded tigerkin a look of ridicule as he flipped the red coin in his hand. Thank you for making me money, 13 said in a teasing tone. Good job, little doggy. Why you? Percival almost lunged at 13 in anger because he didn't know that the boy had not only bet on him, but had placed a bet on his opponent as well. And seeing how much he won, he was confident that he placed an even bigger bet on his enemy winning. Percival was right. 13 had bet 1,000 silver coins for his win. However, this was just a trick to make Percival think that the boy was spending a lot of money on him. The tigerkin didn't know that, after he was taken to the arena, 13 had placed a 10,000 silver coin bet on his opponent. Haha. 13 laughed like a second-rate villain, which grated on Percival's ears. Christopher and Rianna thought that the boy was just laughing in order to taunt his slave. However, they weren't aware that 13 was laughing from the heart. If there was a ranking for the people that 13 hated, the one who would be sitting at the very top would not be his father, the system god. The one he hated the most was Fate. The second one was Heroes. His old man only took third place in his heart. And now, seeing one of the people he hated looking at him with bitterness and anger tickled 13's heart, who had been suffering for thousands of years. Since you weren't injured during your battle, you are going to fight again, 13 said after he finished laughing. Well then, little Taiga, earn me more money, okay? I am looking forward to your performance. Raldo, who was looking at this scene, felt his liver itch. He had a feeling that within a week or two, the duel arena might suffer major losses at the hands of the 7-year-old boy, who was milking them dry of their money. Percival's anger showed on his face. He didn't know what to do with his anger, so when the boy asked Raldo to let him fight a second time, the tigerkin was more than happy to oblige. The ogre he had been up against earlier was a difficult opponent, but he believed that if he had taken his time to weaken it with his quick and relentless attacks, he would have won the battle. If only he had known that 13 placed a higher bet on his opponent, he would have taken his time to win the battle. I will bet this red coin on the next match, Raldo, 13 said in a volume that he thought only Raldo could hear. I choose this ogre named Grug. His name sounds strong. I'll place my bet on this guy. Understood. Raldo nodded as he waved his hand so that his subordinates would take Percival towards the arena. The moment the tigerkin left the room, a sneer appeared on his face. You fooled me once, but it will not happen again, Percival thought. Bastard, I'll make sure you suffer a loss this time. Meanwhile, inside Raldo's office, are you fine with this arrangement? 13 asked. Yes. Raldo nodded. I pity your slave. You're one evil kid. 13 smiled, but he no longer made any comments. Since this was a high-level transaction, Raldo personally took care of it. As the manager of the arena, he had the authority to handle these kinds of transactions. Also, the boy told him that if he agreed with his condition, he would bring greater profit to the arena, which was a good thing. Pleasure doing business with you, Raldo stated as he reached out to shake 13's hand. Same, 13 replied before leaving Raldo's office to head to the stands. Rihanna's slave would be fighting shortly, and he wanted to see just how good the teenage boy was. Rufus, was it? 13 thought. I'm guessing he might be a retainer from one of the prestigious families, or possibly from the monarch clans. The boy had seen how Rufus carried himself, and a single glance was enough for him to tell that the boy was an expert despite his age. He believed that as long as the slave was going to fight against a rank 1 monster, Rufus' chances of winning were high. Rianna had placed a 50 silver bet on the boy, hoping that he would win. 13 could only praise the young lady for not placing all of her eggs in one basket. That way, even if Rufus lost, there was still a chance for her to make a comeback. Duel arena. Rufus stood in the arena and observed the troll in front of him. The monster was at least twice his size, and yet, the teenage boy remained calm. The troll, on the other hand, wasn't as calm as his opponent. It was growling at Rufus because it didn't like the look that the human boy was giving it. Killing is not allowed, the referee shouted. Everything else is allowed. If you fall from the arena, lose consciousness, or surrender, you lose. Now fight. After the signal to fight was given, the troll didn't hesitate to attack the boy who had also taken a fighting stance. A monk fighting style, 13 mused as he looked at the teenage boy with short brown hair and eyes. This will be interesting. When the troll was only a few meters away from him, Rufus stomped his foot forward, propelling himself in the air. A moment later, he unleashed a kick on the troll's jaw, making the latter grunt as it took a step back. The moment he landed on the ground, Rufus kicked the troll's balls, making it curl its body. The barbarians laughed after seeing this scene. This was a very common tactic in the dueling arena. And since most monsters were bigger than the human slaves, they would often target their crotch in order to deal as much damage as they could to their opponents, who were physically stronger than them. The moment the troll lowered its head, Rufus unleashed 4 straight punches, aimed at the monster's jaw in rapid succession. After that, he ended it with a turning sidekick, which was still aimed at the monster's jaw, rattling its brain and causing it to lose consciousness. "Winner, Rufus," the referee shouted. Rianna subconsciously clenched her fist in happiness from Rufus' win. She also gained 250 silvers. The odds were only 5-1, but she was still very happy with the results. 13 smiled from inside his mask before whispering something in Rihanna's ears. "Let the 2 other boys we brought here fight as well," 13 whispered. "Let's see what they are capable of. Observe their battle style as well because they will become the core of your hunting party." Rianna nodded in understanding. She then went to register the 2 other boys, whose names were Aaron and Jean. Just like Rufus, 13 could tell that both of them were properly trained in martial arts. Since there weren't many challengers today, the 2 of them were able to fight right away. Percival's opponent had still not arrived because the owner of the ogre that he was about to fight decided to have lunch before he returned to the dueling arena. This worked in 13's favor because it bought him time to witness the battles of Aaron and Jean, who seemed to have suddenly formed a rivalry with one another. Aaron and Jean had seen how happy Rianna was when Rufus won, so the 2 of them decided to do their best in battle as well. The 7-year-old couldn't help but feel amused due to this sudden turn of events. It was very obvious to him that the 2 teenage boys were trying to impress the young lady who had saved them from slavery. When 13 first saw Rianna, she looked very timid and seemed like someone who could not even hurt a fly. But after getting to know her, he understood that she had only acted that way in order to keep a low profile. While she might not be the kind of beauty that could cause the downfall of a nation, she was, in fact, very pretty. Since that was the case, it was only natural for the 3 boys to develop a crush on her, and thus, do their best to make them look dependable in her eyes. Jean managed to win his match, but it was a close call. The one he fought against was a young barbarian who was testing his martial prowess in the arena. The fight lasted for nearly 15 minutes. The battle had been quite intense, with neither one of them backed down. Unlike Rufus, who specialized in offense, Jean was an all-rounder. He was also very good in counterattacks, which made the young barbarian lose his composure. In the end, the teenage boy played to his strength and fought his opponent in a battle of attrition, winning by a small margin. Jean's arms were bruised and battered from using them to block and deflect his opponent's attacks. Although he got hit a couple of times, none of those landed on his vital parts, allowing him to win the match. Aaron, on the other hand, was more to 13's liking. The boy with blonde hair and blue eyes was very sneaky. He didn't engage his opponents head-on and employed hit-and-run tactics. Similar to Jean, the one he fought against was a barbarian in training, but what caught 13's attention was the fact that Aaron knew his strike range by heart. When his opponent came within the range of his fists and legs, he would hit them without a second thought before quickly retreating. Fighting against someone like him was very annoying since you wouldn't know if he was going to attack or going to run away. The barbarians booed him as well, but Aaron didn't give a hoot to what they were thinking. In the end, he won the match when his opponent conceded out of annoyance. Rihanna's reaction to Aaron's win was lukewarm, but the boy only smiled as he returned to her side like a faithful puppy, waiting for his master's orders. Such an interesting individual, 13 thought. Among the 3 of them, this guy is definitely the most versatile. Aaron made his fight look so easy as if he was fighting against a child. From start to finish, his opponent wasn't even able to land a blow to his body. For the 7-year-old, This spoke volumes of Aaron's abilities, making him the perfect scout for Rianna's future hunting team. After a short break, Percival made his appearance in the arena. He made sure to glance at his master once before shifting his gaze to the ogre in front of him. The ogre was a head taller than the first ogre that the Tigerkin had fought in his first duel. This was a sign that the one he was going to go against was older and, perhaps, even stronger than the ogre he first fought. Even so, Percival wasn't daunted. The only thought in his mind was to beat his opponent and make sure that his master would feel bitter from losing the 50,000 silver coins that he had used to bet on the ogre in front of him. After the referee had given the signal to start the battle, Percival charged forward, which made 13 arch an eyebrow behind the mask he was wearing. The ogre was more than happy to meet his approach with a punch, but the Tigerkin deftly dodged to his right side before kicking the ogre's knee. The Tigerkin immediately backed away after delivering his attack and observed his opponent critically. "Tickle," the ogre sneered before shouting a war cry. It then ran toward Percival, using the size of its body in order to corner the boy. However, Percival had other plans and met the ogre's charge with a charge of his own. The ogre punched down, but Percival evaded it easily. The Tigerkin then used his sharp nails to scratch his opponent's fist, targeting the wrist area. His attack succeeded, and it left a very shallow wound on his opponent's wrist. Percival didn't take any chances and immediately distanced himself, which proved to be a good decision on his part. Had he stayed for 2 more seconds, he could have been hit by the ogre's counterattack, which left a deep mark on the ground where its fist had landed. The exchange between the two continued, with Percival getting hit once in his right shoulder in exchange for scratching the ogre's left eye, making it bleed. The ogre's body was now covered with blood because Percival's tactic was to slowly wear out his opponent. Although he doubted that the ogre would bleed to death, he didn't mind if that happened as well. He wasn't purposely killing his opponent, but the accumulation of damage and loss of blood would sooner or later take a toll on the ogre's body. Percival was certain that even if his opponent bled to death, he wouldn't be charged with a crime. After all, the ogre had all the time in the world to concede the match. But since it didn't plan to back down, Percival continued his meticulous attacks. Every time he engaged his opponent, a new wound would appear on the ogre's body, making it more angry and annoyed. However, no matter what it did, Percival was simply too fast for it to properly land a hit on the Tigerkin's body. In the end, the owner of the ogre stood up and conceded the match. He couldn't afford to let the ogre die as it was a member of his personal hunting party. Although losing to a weaker Tigerkin was annoying, he decided to pull back before the ogre bled to death, causing him significant losses. "Winner, Taiga." The Tigerkin panted for breath before wiping away the saliva that was oozing out from the corner of his lips. He didn't feel anything a while ago because adrenaline was still pumping inside his body. However, the moment the battle ended, the exhaustion hit him like a truck, making him feel as if a mountain was pressing down on his back. When he raised his head to look at his master, he saw Raldo sneakily giving the younger boy 3 red coins, which almost made the Tigerkin stop breathing for a few seconds. Only when 13 glanced once more in his direction did Percival realize that he had been played a second time. Feeling angry, hurt, and distressed, the Tigerkin collapsed on the ground while still looking at his master in disbelief. 13 chuckled internally before raising his hand to show Percival the 3 red coins that were held between his fingers. He knew how sensitive a Tigerkin's hearing was, so he tricked the pitiful slave by purposely saying who he was going to put his bet on while handing the red coin to Raldo. What Percival didn't know was that before the deal was finalized, the 7-year-old changed his mind and placed his bet on him instead. But Raldo was very wary of 13 milking them with his winnings, so he proposed a deal. If the boy won his bet a second time, he would not be allowed to join the gambling house for a month. 13 agreed to this deal, but he also proposed a condition, which Raldo agreed to. That was the last straw that broke the camel's back, making Percival's eyes roll into the back of their sockets as he fainted out of grief and indignation. What the Tigerkin didn't know was that 13 was speeding up his character progression, allowing his destiny to progress as soon as possible. Some heroes grew stronger the more hardships they encountered in their lives. 13 believed that Percival fell under this category since he found him in a slave market. By overcoming these hardships, The hero's resolve would strengthen, allowing him to grow stronger at a rapid pace. All of this was an experiment for the 7-year-old boy, allowing him to better understand the growth of heroes. He was confident that even if he were fated to be a cannon fodder, he would still be able to forge his own path and beat fate in her own B*Tschwy game. A week had passed since Rianna had taken Rufus, Aaron, and Jean into the dueling arena to earn funds for their hunting party. The teenagers didn't always win, but their losses were still at an acceptable level. Rianna was still able to profit from these matches, and as the days went on, her other slaves, heir subordinates, also opened up to her. Most of them were just ordinary teenagers without any grand family backing. Some of them didn't really want to fight, and that was understandable. Those who didn't want to join the hunting party were then delegated to take care of the warehouse and handle chores such as cooking, cleaning, and laundry. 13 didn't lift a finger nor raise a voice to order Rihanna's people around. He had given her complete authority over them and focused all of his attention on helping Christopher get stronger, as well as making Percival hate him more. Percival had now become famous in the dueling arena, and he even gained some patrons who would always bet on him whenever he appeared to fight. Due to his insistence on making things difficult for 13, he wouldn't always win and suffered losses as well in the hopes that the 7-year-old boy would bet on the wrong person, making him go bankrupt. However, in this scheme, the first one to break was Percival. Regardless of whether he won or lost, his master always gained tens of thousands of silver coins, almost making the Tigerkin go crazy. It was as if 13 was able to read him like a book, and no matter what he did, the only winner at the end was the 7-year-old boy. "It's a pleasure doing business with you, Raldo," 13 said as he received 3 red coins from the duel manager. "You know, you should take it easy on your betting," Raldo replied bitterly. "It's hard for us if you always win, you know?" "It's not my fault," 13 replied. "Regardless of what I do, Taiga always earns me money. I'm so lucky to have him." These words almost made Percival puke blood then and there, unable to refute it. He didn't know why 13 was able to accurately guess whether he was going to win or not. It was as if the bastard boy had some kind of future sight that allowed him to guess the result of the battle. What the poor Tigerkin didn't know was that everything that was happening was only a farce. In order to stop 13 from continuing to bet in the gambling den, Raldo cooperated with the boy's plan to make Percival's life miserable. In truth, the 7-year-old was no longer placing bets in the arena. The red coins that Raldo was handing to him every time Percival finished a battle was 13's own money that he had placed in the duel manager's hands for safekeeping. This was why every time the duel ended he would hand 13 exactly 3 red coins, returning the boy's money to him. In short, the boy was just trolling his slave, making Percival think that his master could read him like an open book. So no matter how hard he tried or no matter how unpredictable the ending of his duel would be, 13 would always receive 3 red coins from Raldo. In the end, the Tigerkin finally grew numb and stopped playing mind games with the boy. He just focused on his battles to vent out his frustrations and sharpen his battle style. Percival received training when he was young, but he had never faced someone who fought him seriously. This made the duel arena the perfect place for him. Here, no one cared who you were, who your family was, or what kind of backing you possessed. Once you step on the arena, you either won or you lost, and that was all that mattered to the fighters, as well as the spectators who gambled using their money. Seeing his progress, 13 rewarded Percival his own room and the right to eat at the same table as him, Christopher, and Rianna. "Is your hunting party ready to start hunting, Rianna?" 13 asked after they finished eating dinner. He had ordered Percival to return to his room so that he could talk to Christopher and Rianna in private. "Yes," Rianna replied. "My team is composed of 9 people, and everyone is now fully armed and ready to fight." "Good," 13 nodded. "Don't visit the arena anymore. I don't want you to develop a gambling addiction. Don't forget that all of us are wanderers. You need to gather cores as well as monster drops. We still don't have a clue as to what lighting the beacon of hope means, so it will be best to just prioritize getting stronger for the moment. I will ask Jubii to accompany your group to ensure that you will not be harassed by the barbarians outside." "What about us, young master?" Christopher asked. Should we just stay in the city and wait until the auction for the 5-leaf clover starts? 13 shook his head. We will also form our own hunting party. You bought 2 ogres, plus Brutus and Bruno, so we have 4 brute monsters. Taiga will also join the fight, which gives us plenty of frontline fighters. The 2 tigerkin ladies that you brought will also accompany us, but they will not fight. They will just focus on cooking and doing other miscellaneous chores during our journey. Our goal is to hunt and return before the auction starts, so prepare everything you need because we will leave at sunrise. Christopher nodded his head in understanding. Truth be told, he was also very excited to start hunting monsters again. Right now, 13 was giving the chubby boy all the monster cores from the monsters that they had killed in order to prepare for his eventual breakthrough. The 7-year-old wasn't in a hurry to collect cores for himself, but because he was confident that he would be able to collect 200 cores for himself even after Christopher finished collecting his quota. There was also no guarantee that he would finish his 13 trials before Christopher completed his quest. Taking this into consideration, he decided to strengthen Christopher first. The stronger the chubby boy was, the more useful he was to 13. After finalizing their plans for the morning, the 3 returned to their own rooms to rest for the night. Tomorrow was going to be a busy day, so they wanted to get as much rest as possible before they embarked on a journey to fight against monsters and farm monster drops, which would aid them all in their first wandering. Just as they planned, Rihanna's hunting party focused on hunting in the desert, while 13's hunting party went to explore the Warsor plains, located just northeast of Groner City. Both teams had bought their own horse-drawn wagons to make their journey easier and faster. Christopher was the one manning the wagon because only he had experience with this, which he learned from the time he and his mother lived in the countryside. The 2 tigerkin ladies were with him on the coachman's seat, serving as his protectors. Their names were Jasmine and Ariel. Both of them were in their late 20s and had been captured by the barbarians when they raided the tigerkin village near the border of the Sumatran kingdom. Both the tigerkins and the barbarians would often raid each other and capture slaves from both sides. The tigerkins were a very aggressive tribe. After they managed to conquer the Valbara kingdom, they set their sights on new frontiers and clashed with the barbarians just 10 years after they defeated the Valbaraean army. They thought that they were strong enough for another conquest, but they had underestimated the barbarians' savageness and fighting prowess, making them have a better understanding of a race of humans who took fighting as their main profession. But that was not all. The barbarians and orcs were also in an alliance, so whenever they attacked one side, the other would stab them in the back, making expansion more complicated. The barbarians and the orcs knew this as well, so whenever they had an opportunity, they conducted joint raids and enslaved as much as they could manage to capture. This was their way of preventing the tigerkins from developing rapidly, forcing them to leave the territories near the borders of their newly established kingdom for safety. 13 planned to travel near the border where the 2 sides often engaged in skirmishes. He wanted to know just how serious the conflicts were and which side had a higher chance of winning. Percival, Jasmine, and Ariel felt conflicted after learning about this plan. The 3 of them wanted nothing more than to return to their kingdom and reunite with their families. But after becoming slaves, they lost their freedom, and the only way for them to return to their kingdom was to get rid of the slave tattoo on their foreheads or beg their new masters to free them. Jasmine, Ariel, I promise to free the 2 of you after I finish my mission of lighting the beacon of hope, Christopher said. So until then, serve me well, and I promise that I will not harm either of you. Understood. I'll do as you say. Thank you. Also, I will set the time limit of your slavery for 2 years. If I still haven't finished my mission by then, your slave tattoos will automatically disappear, ending your slave contract. Christopher had no idea how long it would take before his mission ended. Since that was the case, he just gave a 2-year deadline for the 2 tigerkins by his side. The slave tattoo could last up to 5 years. After that, it would automatically disappear, setting the slave free. If one wished to renew this slave contract, one would need to find a slave master who would perform the ceremony. The 2 tigerkin ladies used to think that the moment they were sold as slaves, they would have to live their lives as the plaything of their new masters. So they were quite surprised to see that the one who bought them was a chubby teenage boy who treated them well. The most Christopher did was ask the two ladies to hug him to sleep at night. When they asked why he wanted something like that, the boy simply said that he usually slept beside his mother and that he was not used to sleeping alone. Of course, that wasn't the case. Although it didn't show on his face, Christopher was a very lonely person. His grandparents and his father were dead, while his mother was always in the hospital. Although he had lived in the houses of his relatives, he still felt lonely because he never felt welcomed by them. So when he was given the opportunity to have slaves, Christopher bought the two ladies who were the oldest among the group of slaves that were still in the slave market. Also, Christopher wouldn't admit it, but he liked beastkin girls very much. The ones he liked most were cat girls, bunny girls, and fox girls. However, since these two races weren't available for sale, he bought the only option he had, which was tigerkin ladies. Remember this, Taiga, you're not allowed to land the killing blow on the monsters, 13 ordered. Christopher will be the one to give the last hit regardless of the circumstances. Yeah, you've told me that thrice already, Percival replied in an irritated tone. Also, stop calling me Taiga. My name is Percival. Sure thing, Taiga. Tisk. Suddenly, the wagon came to a halt, making 13 frown. What's wrong? 13 asked as he went to the coachman's seat to see if there was trouble. There is a herd of deer in front of us, young master, Christopher replied, and their alpha male is looking in our direction. I have a feeling that if we continue to advance, the herd will attack us. 13 glanced in the direction of the herd that numbered at least 100 individuals. The alpha deer stood 3 meters in height, and its antlers were at least half its body size. Although the other deer had light brown fur, the alpha male had silver fur, which matched the data in 13's database. That is a rank 6 alpha monster called Quicksilver Deer, 13 said, which almost made Christopher pee his pants. The reason why it's looking at us is because we are traveling with ogres. For now, don't do anything rash. Although these deer are not aggressive by nature, they will not hesitate to attack if they feel threatened. Give your orders for the two of them to stay put and keep their lips shut tightly so that we don't spook them. The two ogres, whose names were Ader and Devar, were both rank 3 monsters. 13 had considered buying many monster slaves so that he could form his own elite unit after Christopher had returned to Pangea so that he could continue his remaining trials. However, he put this idea on hold because taking care of too many monsters was a hassle. For this reason, he decided to just focus on Percival's progress because he believed that raising a hero was better than raising a group of beasts. After half an hour of waiting, the herd of deer finally left, allowing them to continue their journey. However, this encounter led 13 to make changes in their formation. Earlier, Ader and Devar were traveling alongside them, but now, he decided that having the two ogres in close proximity to them was a bad thing. There was a chance that they would find other groups of monsters in the plains that would not ignore the presence of ogres and take the initiative to attack. In order to prevent this from happening, 13 asked Christopher to order the two ogres to follow them from a distance. The chubby boy didn't hesitate to obey the younger boy's words and did as he was told. He would soon know that his young master had made the right choice because 2 hours after they resumed their journey, they would meet with another group of monsters, who were well known for attacking anything they perceived as a threat to their herd. It's hard to find lone monsters here in the plains, Christopher commented. The lowest number of monsters we've seen in a single group have been groups of 3 and 4, and those were predators. Young master, maybe we should take the risks. 13 pondered if they should take a risk just as Christopher had proposed. The chances of success were high, but there was also a chance that they would lose some manpower in the process. The predators that traveled in groups of 3s and 4s were always led by a rank 3 monster. Herds, on the other hand, were led by rank 3 and above alpha monsters. Their group's manpower were Brutus and Bruno, who were both rank 2 monsters, and 2 ogres who were both rank 3 monsters. Christopher had no intention of letting the 2 tigerkin ladies fight. Their role was to guard him just in case an unexpected turn of events happened. Both tigerkins were rank 2 beastkins, but they weren't that proficient in combat. Although Percival was just a rank 1 tigerkin, he was more proficient in fighting when compared to the 2 tigerkin ladies. With their lineup, they could fight against monsters, who were in groups of 3s and 4. More than that and it would be troublesome. Understood, 13 replied after careful consideration. Command your slaves, including Jasmine and Ariel, to follow my orders without question. If we are going to do this, I will need to personally command them in battle. Christopher nodded. But, just as he was about to give his orders, they heard a blood-curdling roar behind them, which made the chubby boy's face turn pale. 13's face also became solemn when he looked in the direction of the two ogres, who were keeping a distance of 200 meters away from them. He immediately ordered Percival to cover Christopher's mouth to prevent him from calling out to the two ogres, who were fighting for their lives against a purple-furred honey badger. Don't summon Brutus and Bruno if you don't want them to die too, 13 said as he stood in front of Christopher, cupping his face and making him look straight into his eyes. That is a rank 6 field boss. If it sees us as a threat, we're done for. Jasmine, Ariel, cover his eyes, and no matter what happens, make sure that he doesn't do anything reckless. The two Tigerkin ladies took 13's orders seriously because they were also familiar with this monster. It was one of the most fearless monsters found in the borders of the Sumatran kingdom, and even strong hunting parties stayed clear of this fearsome beast. The honey badger was 2 meters tall and 5 meters long. It was the undisputed overlord of the Warsor plains, and very few creatures were able to escape its pursuit. It had a terrible temper and wouldn't hesitate to attack anything that moved. The worst part was that none of them were able to sense its presence. If not for the fact that one of the two ogres had cried out in pain after the honey badger had bitten off one of its arms, they wouldn't have known that it was in very close proximity to them. The boy could only watch helplessly as the two ogres were torn apart by the honey badger before it greedily ate them. Even Percival, who had a strong will, couldn't help but avert his gaze as he looked at the blood that was seeping from the jaws of the honey badger, who seemed to enjoy the two ogres very much. After it finished its meal, it gave the wagon a sidelong glance before walking away with a satisfied look on its face. Since 13's group had remained perfectly still, the monster didn't attack them because it was already satisfied with what it ate. It wasn't a djinn-type monster who liked to eat humans. The purple-furred honey badger preferred eating monsters. Of course, if the two ogres were traveling alongside 13's and Christopher's wagon, it would have attacked them as well. If that were to happen, they would have served as the appetizers or the after-meal desserts of the ferocious field boss, who had easily defeated two rank 3 ogres, as if they were just newborn chicks. When 13 was certain that the monster was no longer around them, he ordered Jasmine and Ariel to take Christopher inside the wagon to rest. The chubby boy's face was already covered in snot and tears as he continued to sob due to the death of his two ogre slaves. The two Houdini Mustangs that were pulling their wagons were also in a miserable state, and were barely able to stand due to fear. It took a while for 13 to coax the two horses to move and head back to Groner City. Not even half a day had passed, and they were forced to return to the city due to the unexpected turn of events. 13 also took into consideration that their group wasn't in a condition to continue their hunt because of the incident that just happened. The only silver lining was that Christopher didn't see the entirety of what had happened to his two ogres. He was spared from the raw brutality and violence that children his age shouldn't be able to see. And yet, he was forced to experience it because he was a wanderer. Take care of him, 13 said to Jasmine and Ariel before leaving the warehouse. Tiona, who had taken refuge inside the boy's clothes when the monster appeared, cautiously crawled onto his shoulder. She then started to flick her tongue, while looking at her surroundings to ensure that they were truly safe. After confirming that they were back to the city, she coiled around 13's neck and rested her head on his cheek. The 7-year-old subconsciously patted her head with his finger, as if to assure her that they were safe. Hey, where are you going? Percival, who was also unable to sit still in the warehouse, followed behind 13. Although he tried hard to hide it, the Tigerkin was still shaken by their encounter with the purple-furred honey badger, who made him realize how easily they could have lost their lives in their short trip to the Warsor plains. To the slave market, 13 replied. Are you going to buy new slaves for our hunting party? Yes. Percival clenched his fists tightly when he heard 13's casual reply. Are you treating us as disposable tools? Percival asked, feeling rage build up inside of him. Are you going to use us as bait? Are we just cannon fodder in your eyes? 13 stopped walking before turning around to look at his slave, who wasn't able to hold back his emotions. When Percival saw the look in 13's face, the insults that he was about to hurl at him became stuck up in his throat. Cannon fodder? 13 looked at the tigerkin in disdain. You're not qualified to become one. So shut up because you have no idea what you're talking about. After saying those words, the boy turned around and continued to walk toward his destination. Percival, who was left behind, knelt on the ground on all fours as he panted for breath. The sheer killing intent that oozed out of the 7-year-old's body, which was directed in his direction, made him feel as if he was just a step away from dying. The tigerkin vomited, due to discomfort and the dizziness he was feeling after being subjected to such a gaze. How can someone so young have such dense killing intent? Percival wiped his mouth using the back of his hand. His killing intent is even stronger than my father's. Is he even human? Those were the last thoughts in his mind before he fainted. But before his entire being descended into darkness, he knew in his heart that he would no longer be able to look at his master the same way again.